Hello and welcome to the Weekly Stuff Podcast with Jonathan Lack.
And Sean Chapman.
We are here to talk about stuff. This week on the show, we are talking all about Dragon Ball Super, Broly, the anime sensation that is sweeping the nation. We'll get into all of that. But we are going to review the new Dragon Ball movie, which we've been preparing for. The last two episodes, which were pre-recorded, were building up to this. We went over the entire TV series, Dragon Ball Super. We reviewed the original 3 Broly movies. And now we have the new one, so we're going to talk all about that movie. We're also going to cover a bunch of news from the last few weeks, including the split, the divorce of Bungie and Activision over Destiny, and who gets custody of the child there. EA canceling their 45th Star Wars game.
Yeah, EA is still floundering with Star Wars in what is maybe the most baffling thing in modern video games.
It very much is. We've got some movie news, including a new Spider-Man trailer, which is fun. So we're going to cover all of that. But Sean, as we usually do when we're reviewing a movie, we're going to get into spoiler detail on Broly later in the show. Don't worry, we'll let you know when that comes. Because you don't want this movie spoiled. Even if you think you know everything that's in the movie, you don't. What did you think?
Holy fucking shit, Jonathan. It's really good. Like, it's really, really, really good. Like, I went in with very high expectations, because the movie obviously came out in Japan about a month ago, so, like, I heard through the grapevine or whatever, this, like, impressions leaking and stuff, that, like, people really liked this movie when it came out over there. So I was pretty hyped going in, and all the trailers looked amazing, and so stoked off of the end of Dragon Ball Super, which, you know, we did the whole podcast talking about how much we both loved that. But even with how high my expectations were, I feel like they were blown completely out of the water. And it's a really, really great Dragon Ball movie. I think it's for me, it's the best Dragon Ball movie. Its only competition is Battle of Gods. Like, Battle of Gods is the old, like, those are the two movies that are, like, in the echelon of, like, these are, like, legitimately, like, really good, well-made films.
I agree.
And for me, Dragon Ball Super Broly is even better than Battle of Gods, so.
Yeah, I will get into this later, because I probably still pick Battle of Gods, but that's not because I'm putting down the Broly movie by any means. And I agree with you; those are the top two. So, like, you're just picking between.
But it's not just those are the top two. It's like those are so the top two. There's like a giant wall.
Yes.
Like it's in a different ranking basically than everything else.
Well, I agree that those are just great movies, and the rest might be great Dragon Ball movies. But this is a step beyond that, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
No, it's great. It's fantastic. You know, I had a complicated reaction to it. I wound up seeing the movie twice. One of those times required me driving 50 miles to another city to go see it at a regular theater. And I saw it twice for two reasons. One is the theater really fucked up the presentation on my first time, which just really, that takes you out of the movie. It's very hard to enjoy a movie. Specifically in this case, I couldn't hear a lot of the movie. So I'll tell that whole story later. But I think it was also just that this movie is genuinely really bold with Dragon Ball. It's bold with how, like, it's visually bold. It's a completely new animation style. It's the biggest overhaul in art style Dragon Ball has really ever had. It's the biggest overhaul in how they present fights and choreography and all of that. It has some really daring aesthetics. But it's also surprisingly bold in how Toriyama takes basically all of the most popular non-canonical elements in the series and ties them into a new canonical story and really reworks a lot of what we kind of think we know about the series. I think it has really interesting themes about generations in this universe, and I think it is so bold in so many ways that the first time I saw it, I knew I liked it, but I didn't quite know what to make of it. And so, like, I had to go see it again as soon as possible because it was more than I've had in years with a movie. I just couldn't get the movie out of my head. Like, I had trouble sleeping after I saw it for the first time because it is so much to digest. And, you know, saying that, I don't want to scare away casual fans because if you haven't seen Dragon Ball since you were a kid, I think you could enjoy the hell out of this. It's not, you don't need to have seen Super. They will catch you up on what's happened in Super. You might be a little like, where the hell did the blue hair come from? But, you know, you'd get it. They're powering up. So I would, anyone who likes Dragon Ball should go see this movie. But I think if you're a longtime fan, this is not just a fan service movie. It is it's what Super is. It's furthering the narrative of this both aesthetically and narratively in a lot of really compelling and oftentimes risk-taking ways. And I think that's something that's interesting to me about this movie.
Absolutely. And I think if there's one significant complaint I have about the movie, is that it doesn't have a splash screen at the end that tells you when new Dragon Ball is coming out. Because I so desperately need, if it's a movie, if it's a TV show, I just want to know when we can pick up with the story.
I'm pretty sure, Sean, everyone who worked on this movie has collapsed on the floor in their office. Like, that's what the splash screen should be, is everyone being like, when we're out of the coma that, it required to make this fucking masterpiece of animation, we'll tell you when we're making more. You know what I mean? It's like, it's crazy.
Yeah, but this movie was more than worth the, hiatus and break from the end of Dragon Ball Super. It, works really well having that break from the turn of the power and then coming here and having this movie and both doing the reworking some of the history of Dragon Ball stuff and then pushing it forward by incorporating Broly and some of those elements in ways that I'm really excited for whatever the next step is, because this movie does not, for all the people when Dragon Ball Super was soft canceled or whatever and they announced they were making the movie, there were a lot of people being like, oh, that's it for Dragon Ball Super. This movie does not end in a way that feels like, okay, this is Dragon Ball's done for a while. This movie ends in a way that's like, okay, this is it. It's pivoting towards whatever the next step is going to be for the future of the franchise.
It's going to be we're going to talk about all that later in the show, and I think what's interesting is also this movie has had literally unprecedented success. For anime, not just in America, but kind of all over the world, other than in its home nation of Japan, where it did crazy well. It did bigger than either Battle of Gods or Resurrection F at home in Japan, but it also has done just gangbusters all over the world. It's already made $21 million in America at the time of this recording.
Fucking Jesus.
It's genuinely, I don't know what the future of Dragon Ball is, because that kind of success we're in uncharted territory. Mm-hmm. So I'm really curious where this goes from here. But we'll talk about all that. I guess one last thing before we move on to other stuff, Sean, is that I had someone ask me on Twitter when I was posting about the movie. They said, so do you think this was better than the original Broly movie? And I didn't know how to answer that. I didn't know if I should answer it like an asshole or not, because I didn't know, because that could be a totally sincere question. If someone is kind of unplugged from the larger narrative, I get it. But is it, Sean?
Yes. If it is better than the original Broly movie, yes.
If it weren't for the fact that the original Broly movie does have, good voice acting, good animation, good music, I would say this movie is the exact qualitative polar opposite. Mm-hmm. But narratively, at the very least, it is the exact qualitative polar opposite.
Yeah, I mean, once we start, at the end of this podcast, when we do the full in-depth spoiler discussion, there's going to be a lot of us being very shocked at saying things that we like about the character Broly.
Yeah.
Which is just what Toriyama does with Broly in this movie as a character alone puts it so far above any of the merits of the Broly trilogy that we did a whole podcast episode on.
Because I think if you did like Broly in the past, you're going to like this movie. It's everything that was good about Broly with none of the shit that was bad about him, and all the good stuff is way better. So it's never have 3 movies been made more immediately obsolete as the original Broly trilogy has by the release of this film. They are such historical curiosities now.
Yeah, I'm glad that we did that episode and we watched those 3 Broly movies, because I really don't feel like I'll ever have. I said this about Bio Broly at the time when we recorded the podcast. It is now definitely true of the other 2 as well. I don't think I'm ever going to watch those movies again. I just don't know if I'll ever need to. They are so immediately made irrelevant, and they are all 3 of them very boring. So.
Honestly, Bio Broly might be the most relevant because it's the easiest to detach from our new Broly, because he's not really Broly in that. He's just a soup monster.
It's just Swamp Thing.
Yeah. So,
Krillin versus the Swamp Thing.
So, Sean, let's do some stuff. You and I haven't talked in a couple weeks because, like we said, the last 2 podcasts were pre-recorded because I was traveling back to Iowa. I was getting my semester started. You were getting your semester started. How's life?
I'm student teaching now, which basically, for people who do not know what student teaching means for a high school teacher, it basically means I'm teaching without being paid. So that's
wonderful.
Great. Yes. So I am much more busy now than I will be busy this whole year, and for the rest of my life. This is just like the rest of my life. I will be very, very busy because our generation doesn't get to retire, Jonathan. That's not something we'll be able to do. So this is the beginning. Yes, this just got very dark. Me thinking about our bleak future. But yes, so I haven't had a huge amount of time to do other stuff. But yes, I have been student teaching and beginning that weird journey and playing some video games and stuff along the way. What about your general life stuff?
So I have gone on, over Christmas break, I started playing through the Dragon Quest series. As y'all know, I was a huge fan of Dragon Quest XI last year, which came out on the PS4 in English, and I fell in love with it. I was also a big fan of Dragon Quest Builders when it came out on Switch, and those two games just made me really, really want to get into Dragon Quest. So over Christmas break, I started playing Dragon Quest 1, and it was really good.
Yeah.
And then I played Dragon Quest 2, and it wasn't as good, but it was still really good.
And it's really weird in a fun, interesting way.
It is. And then I played Dragon Quest 3, and it was much longer, but it was really good. And I finished that yesterday, and then I started Dragon Quest 4, and it's really good so far. So, Sean, I am on an epic JRPG bender where I am just fucking marathoning JRPGs, specifically Dragon Quest games. It's almost certainly not healthy for me, but that's where I'm at, and I don't know when it's going to stop.
Yeah, you've already very handily overtaken my progress when I was doing the Dragon Quest stuff, where I played through Dragon Quest 1, and I did them in Japanese, so it probably took me a little bit longer. But I played through Dragon Quest 1, took a little break, did Dragon Quest 2, took a little break, and then got probably a third to halfway through Dragon Quest 3, and that was where I was like, this game is really good, but I cannot play 3 Famicom/Super Famicom JRPGs in a row. And
oh, I could
maintain my sanity, but yes, apparently you're a stronger man than I, Jonathan, because you have just kept trucking right the fuck along.
I just have more time on my hands, I guess. I don't know. To be clear, most of what I've played of the series so far was during a break period where I had no other worldly responsibilities. So
right.
That's a good time to play JRPGs. And now I am back in school, and there's a lot going on. But this was the first week. I've had some downtime. I was sick a little bit last week, so I've been laid up more than usual, and that's just led me to play more Dragon Quest because it makes me feel good, I guess. And I have just been mainlining this series, and it is so good. So I should say, when you played them, you played the Super NES remakes, which were never localized over here, but that's what you were playing.
Yes, yeah, because what I did was I bought to ease my conscience, I bought the iPhone versions, which I believe are the versions that you played, just so they I illegally purchased a version of this game, and then I just used an emulator to play the Super Famicom versions, which are obviously in Japanese, which are the Super Famicom remakes of Famicom/NES versions of those games.
Yes, so I was not sure how I was going to play these. I actually started playing Dragon Quest 1 on its Game Boy Color remake via emulator. Mm-hmm. So, let's recap really quick. Dragon Quest 1, 2, 3 have an interesting release history because they are kind of the hardest to play over here in English.
Yeah.
Because those were all Famicom games, and they all had Famicom localizations back in the day in the early 90s, late 80s in the United States. And then they had Game Boy Color remakes. There was a pack with 1 and 2 and a standalone release of 3 on the Game Boy Color. And those ones, interestingly, were a complete retranslation, and they are the most faithful official translations of Dragon Quest, because they use all of the actual proper nouns, it's Loto all the way through, it's Laurasia, it's all the original, Japanese terminology. So if you want, the most faithful version of Dragon Quest, those 3 are the most faithful official translations. Obviously, there are fan translations for all of these that are more quote-unquote faithful. So I started playing the Game Boy Color one. I almost beat Dragon Quest 1 that way, actually. So I kind of played Dragon Quest 1 twice. It's really short, though.
Yes, it's also very, very good.
Yes, it's very good. But you can play that game in a day. It's really interesting. It's like a miniature, almost like Zelda Breath of the Wild, because it's you're here, the evil castle is right there. You've got to figure out what you need to do to go fight that evil dude in the castle. Bye. Go have your quest,
Yeah.
And it's really cool that way. But I started playing on Game Boy Color. The Game Boy Color versions are really cool. The translations are great. I think they look beautiful. I love the old school Game Boy Color look. It's very low fidelity. It's low tech, but I love the colors on the Game Boy Color. There's a lot of soul to it. The 8-bit chiptune versions of the music is great. The problem, though, is that those games have the most extreme screen crunch I think I've ever seen, where like, especially because those versions don't have a map system in them. You are like, you can see about, 8 blocks around you at any time. So like, if you're out on the overworld, you can see basically nothing. You're kind of just futzing around in the dark. You will eventually get the lay of the land, but it's tough. In dungeons, it's even worse, because in Dragon Quest 1, you have to use a lantern for everything, and it creates this little beam around you, which is, it's intentional. It's supposed to make it challenging, but on Game Boy Color, it's much more challenging. And so finally, I booted up. I was really resistant to play the iOS versions, because that's the third release we have of these games. And the iOS versions are interesting. They're essentially the SNES games remade again. Like, they are, for 1 and 2, they're not the Super NES graphics. They're some weird, like, they're supposed to look like 16-bit, but they really aren't. Frankly, they don't look that good. Dragon Quest 3 looks more like an actual Super NES game and looks better. But they are basically the original English translations from the Nintendo Entertainment System versions, the NES versions, with a couple of, like, they've updated some of it a little bit to make it clearer here and there. But it's those original translations. They're the Japanese mobile ports. They've got most of the features from the Super NES versions, and you play them entirely in portrait mode on your phone, which is a little odd, but you do get used to it. And those games have very simple controls, so you just have like a virtual D-pad, and you move around, and you just hit the screen kind of wherever to confirm things, talk to people, go through battles. It took me a little while to get used to it, but considering that I mainlined all 3 of these games in less than a month, I must have liked them, and I did. I actually would recommend the iOS versions pretty highly. They... again, I wish 1 and 2 looked better. Like, they're very blocky. Like, it's very obviously they made one texture block and just, like, cut and pasted everywhere. And it looks like something you would make in, like, RPG Maker, not like an actual game that was polished. But all the monster designs are there. They look great. The music is all the updated MIDI orchestral music. It sounds very nice. It's the exact same tracks that are in Dragon Quest Builders, for instance. The localizations are very usable. It's got really handy quick save features because saving is very scarce in those early games.
Yeah, you had to go to the king or to a church to save. Yeah.
Yeah, there weren't even... church saving doesn't come in until 4. Which is crazy. But yeah, so saving is very scarce, but the remakes on iOS make it easier. So eventually, like, I really liked playing them on iOS, and because those early games have a lot less story and a lot more exploration, they're really good on-the-go mobile games, because you might be sitting on the bus or somewhere else or watching TV or something and be like, I just want to grind a level or two. And it's just fun to pull out your phone and do that. It makes it very easy to play. On the flip side, I was terrified of myself because I upped my phone usage by about 2 to 3 times over the last few weeks. Because iPhone, have you seen this, Sean? In the newest iOS, they have a thing that, like, tracks how much you use your phone, and it, like, gives you a weekly report card.
Oh, geez. I've not used that.
Okay, yeah. It's on by default, and it just says, like, your iPhone usage is up or down by X%, and after the first week, mine was up by, like, double, and I had my phone on for, like, 7 hours a day or something. It was crazy.
Oh, God. That's too much.
Yeah, it made me feel, like, really gross. So I'm not playing them on iOS anymore, because now I have the DS versions of literally the rest of the series, because 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 are all out on DS or 3DS here in the United States. If you're playing on a Japanese 3DS, you can literally play all 11 games on 3DS, which is insane to me and also awesome. But yeah, so now I'm over on my DS, which feels like, okay, this is an actual game system. I don't feel as gross using this all the time. But the iOS versions are good. They're really cheap for 1, 2, and 3. I would recommend them. They're really fun. But for the games themselves, yeah. Sean, I echo everything you've said about them in the past. Dragon Quest 1 is such a wonderful, unique JRPG in that it lays down a lot of what the genre is, but it also has a lot that is just very unique to the genre. Like, you never have a party. It's just you against one enemy every time. It's very open and non-linear. Once you know what you're doing in the game, you could do the game, like, in an hour or 2, I suspect. Like, minus maybe some grinding. But you just have to go to different places and get all the different things, and then get to the Dragon Lord's castle and fight him, and that's the game, and it is short and sweet and really fun. Dragon Quest II is a direct sequel to that, where you're playing as, like, the descendants of the character from the first game, and it's cool to see how they've built out the world of Alefgard. There's a lot of cool world building, but Dragon Quest II also is just, it's kind of weird, and it is grindy as fuck, and has some of the most convoluted level design I've ever seen in a game, but it's still really interesting.
Yeah, Dragon Quest II was the one that I basically played with a walkthrough, because it was just like, I don't know, especially playing it in Japanese, I was like, I have no idea where the fuck I'm trying to go. Like, I can't tell if I don't know where I'm going because I'm playing this in my non-native language, or this game is just very confusing.
It's very confusing. I needed to check walkthroughs periodically for all three, but for 2, I agree. You basically have to have a walkthrough out. It is. I don't know what was in the water in the Famicom generation, but every 2 from that generation, Zelda 2, Metroid 2, Fire Emblem 2, Castlevania 2, Dragon Quest 2, Final Fantasy 2, all the 2s, they're not just like black sheep, but they're all black sheep in similar ways, where they are weird, and they obfuscate things, and they're confusing, and they're often very interesting games that, like, when they're remade, they're often very compelling if you like clean up some of the rough edges. But it's a crazy trend from that generation.
Yeah, it just felt like they were like figuring shit out with like these new genres of games, of like side-scrolling action games and RPGs that were still pretty new.
Mario 2, both of them.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Both of them in different ways.
Yeah. But yeah, Dragon Quest 2, maybe for hardcore fans only, but it is interesting. And then Dragon Quest 3 is like, it's the masterpiece of the early, trilogy, because the first 3 are a very clear trilogy where Erdrick / Loto, whether you're doing American or Japanese, it's because the first game is the darkness has returned, and you are the descendant of Loto or Erdrick, and you are off to, like, recreate Erdrick's original quest. And then Dragon Quest III does a really cool thing where it just goes back in time and tells you Erdrick's story. Dragon Quest III is also a much bigger game. Like, the first 2 are, like, under 10 hours long. Dragon Quest III is a solid 30 hours. It has a full party system with characters you create. It has a full class system. It has a really big world, and it also includes the complete world from Dragon Quest I in it, but altered. It's got an amazing soundtrack, just out of this world good. It's a little long in parts, but it is really cool, and I think the way it does its prequel story, where you go back in time and see the original Erdrick character, like, becoming the hero, it's interesting because there's like an almost like weird little thematic commentary on how there's always like another mythical hero, because the whole point of Erdrick's story is that he's following in the footsteps of his father Ortega, who did not get to complete his quest, and you're kind of going after him, and there's also like a lot of myths in the world that you thought started with Erdrick, but they just sort of were always there in the ether, but there's also a lot that is filled in for you. There's a lot of great Easter eggs if you played the first 2 games. It's a really cool story. Like, if you play one of the 3, I would recommend Dragon Quest 3. It's an amazing, amazing game, but Dragon Quest 1 is also just very cool and unique, and it's short and sweet, and really those first 3, they are a little hard to marathon because they repeat the same things over and over again because it's all about that legacy of Erdrick. But it is still a very neat, like, set of video games, and all of them are so ahead of their time. And my favorite thing playing these was constantly, like, discovering all these new features that I didn't know these games had that far back, like the party system and the some of the stuff with, like, fast travel and some of the stuff with the class creation in Dragon Quest III. And I would always look like, we're always told that Final Fantasy invented these things. Let me look up the dates. And it's always Dragon Quest did it, and then Final Fantasy would do it 1 year later. And that's literally for the entirety of those franchises up until, like, they diverge in the PlayStation era. That's what it always is Final. And I'm not, like, dissing Final Fantasy. It's just we have a very incomplete history in the West, because Dragon Quest, like, on console at least, invented all of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a crazy series. It's so much fun to go back to. Like, I would definitely urge people to go back and try to play Dragon Quest 1. Just because, like you said, it's nowhere near the time commitment of Dragon Quest 3, because that's the main reason why it probably petered out with Dragon Quest 3. Is just like, okay, this game is like not quite what we expect from JRPG length today, because today it's more like about 50 hours is the standard. But it was starting to approach that length, and it was hard for me to dedicate that much time to it. But Dragon Quest 1 is a much more digestible game in that genre, and it is really cool and it's really approachable, and the stuff that made that game so good, I think, is still incredibly enjoyable today.
Yep. And now I'm on to Dragon Quest 4, so I'm on my good old 3DS playing that. It's great. It's the best one so far, at least. 4, this is where they started getting experimental. And 4 is the one, it's called Chapters of the Chosen in the West, and it's 5 chapters, and the first 4 are these individual, like, short stories with the characters who will become the hero's party, and then you don't get to the thing with, like, the hero and his party going on a quest until the 5th and final chapter. And then, Dragon Quest V is the one that takes place over a character's entire life, and I'm really excited to get into all of these. This is the Zenithian trilogy or something is what they're called, and they're really cool. I'm looking at my whole DS collection here, and I'm excited to play all of these. I don't know if I will be able to marathon all of these at once, but, you know, who the fuck knows? I'm already on 4. I didn't think I'd get this far this fast, and Dragon Quest 4 is so fucking good. I just, my energy is renewed all over again. So
awesome.
And while I liked...
Yeah.
Sorry, what?
No, someday I will get back to it. Someday during the summer or something, I will get back into Dragon Quest.
And since you can read Japanese, there's a bunch of cool versions of these that you can play. Like, Dragon Quest 4 has the PS1 release, which basically is what the DS version is. But Dragon Quest 5 has that. They did a full 3D PS2 remake that's in the style of Dragon Quest 8. And it looks amazing, but we never got that. So, yeah. Anyway, Dragon Quest is cool. I recommend it. I also want to say I got for Christmas, and I forgot to show this on the podcast earlier, the Dragon Quest Illustrations book that came out. This came out in Japan in 2016 for the 30th anniversary of Dragon Quest, but we just got it in December here in English, and it is the complete illustrations Akira Toriyama has done for Dragon Quest. So it is all of the box art, all of the instruction manual art, all of his sketches for the individual monsters. So you can see some of those here, Sean.
Holy shit, yeah.
Oh, it's so good. It's so much fun to read. The thing is, I had almost pulled the trigger on ordering the Japanese version of this several times because... like, it's translated, but there's like 2 pages of text in this whole thing. It's pictures. You don't need the translations. But we got it in English, which is great. I get to save on shipping, you know. So I got this with a gift card I got for Christmas, and as I'm playing the games, it's so fun to be like, oh, I love that monster design. Let me go look at Akira Toriyama's original sketch of it here. Or like, here's the different protagonists from Dragon Quest 2, and they look so good. It's an awesome book. We're going to talk about another Akira Toriyama illustration book later today, because another one got announced for localization here. But this book is awesome. It's on Amazon. It's like $30. It's a little pricey, but if you like Akira Toriyama's art and you have any affection for Dragon Quest, it is so worth it. It's beautiful. He is such an amazing artist, and it is so fun to look at all that art. And I'm just, you know, I'm on a real Akira Toriyama vibe these days between Dragon Ball and Dragon Quest, and, you know, he's having quite the second or third act, we might say.
Yes. One might say that he's never gone away. He's just been...
No, not really.
His shit's just been going constantly since, like, the 80s.
Yes. He just doesn't have to write a chapter of manga every week.
Yeah, he just made some of, like, the biggest, most successful media franchises, and just they get to continue and go.
Yep. All right. So, Sean, you've been playing a video game, and this will transition nicely into our first piece of news, but what have you been up to?
Yes, so like I said earlier, I started student teaching, which that started in like early January, because in case you don't remember, high school starts in like January 8th or something and then ends on like May 25th, which just after being in college for so long just feels fucking barbaric. I don't understand what we're doing to teenagers. Like, this just, why is it so damn long? But so I have not had... So my, like, winter break was not very long. So, I was trying to find a game, and the first few days of student teaching, I wasn't really playing anything because I was very tired. Then eventually I had this sense like, oh, wait, I can do, like, I know a good game to play, and I had bought the DLC that I hadn't played yet when it was very cheap. It was just like something I could play piecemeal and kind of turn my brain off, and that was Destiny 2. This is a game that I loved, both of us loved when it came out, and then we fell off of it almost immediately because that, when it launched, had no good sense of how to, like, even worse than Destiny 1, of how to engage players for a long time, because they took out stuff like the daily heroic missions and all that kind of stuff. That was the thing that kept me playing Destiny 1 for a long time, even before the DLCs for that came out. So I fell off of Destiny 2 when it came out in 2016. Basically skipped everything in Destiny 2 for the entirety of last year. Which was they did 2 DLC releases that were kind of like how Destiny 1 did it. It's called like the Warmind and the other one. There's 2 of them. And the Warmind is the second one. There's a Mercury one and there's a Mars one. And then they did kind of the same thing they did with Destiny 1, which is they released a big expansion pack, which was last fall, called Destiny 2 Forsaken. And so I have taken my Hunter character from the first time I played through Destiny 2, and I played through the 2 DLC packs, the Mercury one and the Mars one, and I'm a bit into Forsaken. Like, I have no idea how, like, I'm suspecting Forsaken is probably like the Taken King a lot longer than it looks like at first, because I think I'm getting kind of close to finishing the campaign of Forsaken, but I suspect that there's a huge amount of content after that, because there's also a bunch of stuff they've released post Forsaken, because that's been like 6 months or something since that originally came out. So yeah, I've just been plugging away at Destiny 2, playing probably like an hour or so a day, and Destiny's really fucking good, dude. Like, it was good in 2014 when Destiny 1 came out. It was good when they released the expansions for Destiny 1. Even when it was bad, it was good. And then Destiny 2 was awesome at launch, but I feel like it's the kind of how I've always felt with Destiny, that once I've taken a break from it and I come back, I'm so reinvigorated by what that game does so well, which is just that the core combat loop and the art design and the world and the music and just the sense of being in that universe is so satisfying to me. And it's also one thing that I have to give Destiny 2 extreme props for, is that I have not played Destiny since I had gotten my fancy new TV and the PS4 Pro, and holy shit, does Destiny look so fucking good. Like, it is by far the best use of HDR I have seen. I've honestly not been super impressed by most HDR. Like, Spider-Man has some pretty good stuff. God of War has some pretty good stuff. I should probably put in Horizon Zero Dawn, because that probably looks very good, but I have not looked at that.
You should check out the Naughty Dog games.
Yes, and I did. I did put in Uncharted 4 and just looked at it. I put in whatever the DLC thing they did for Uncharted 4. It's like, fucking looks really good. But there's a lot of a lot of games just kind of don't do much with the HDR stuff. Like Monster Hunter doesn't do anything really with it. Dragon Ball FighterZ doesn't do anything with it. Red Dead Redemption 2 doesn't do anything with it, which is really disappointing. Destiny 2 is the best looking HDR I've seen, which is not surprising if you've been a big fan of Bungie's games since particularly Halo 3, where Halo
color
3
is sort of their jam.
Yes, and particularly like Destiny felt like the sequel to Halo 3 in so many ways, just like visually to me, where it's like Halo Reach went for a much darker color palette, and I like the way that Halo Reach looks, but Halo 3 had that just gorgeous color palette with these really just vibrant, bright blues and purples and explosions, and like the plasma grenades in Halo 3 just look so gorgeous, and it's the perfect kind of color palette for HDR lighting, for like the really like sexy kind of HDR lighting where you want like stuff that's bright to be crazy fucking bright, and then like the dark areas of the screen are like basically black. And yeah, Destiny 2 looks just absolutely gorgeous, and all the environments, all the new environments, like a lot of the Forsaken stuff, it takes place in an area in the reef, so it's like a lot of that Awoken stuff, and it's like the comets have like all collided and exploded, and there's just like this blue gas and stuff everywhere, and you're just in this kind of like impossible roped together like asteroid kind of place, and that it just looks so amazing. So yeah, taking that break away from like the art design in Destiny gave me this whole new appreciation for it, because it is such a gorgeous looking game. But then also just the core combat of Destiny is still some of the most satisfying first-person shooter combat in any game. Like, it's still not been surpassed by anything else. And yeah, like, I don't have much to say about the first 2 DLC packs, because they're very serviceable and is the kind of thing that, like, honestly, you could skip them if you wanted to, because if you buy Forsaken, you get both of those. So those are just wrapped into the Forsaken package. And if you get Forsaken, you get like a thing that you can basically spend on the character select screen that will just bump a character up to like Forsaken level power.
That's good, because we'll talk about this later. But as we all know, Destiny 2 has had some sales problems. So yeah. I forget I think it was Dragon Quest XI when that came out. But it was around the time that came out. If you bought any video game from Best Buy, you just got a free copy of Destiny 2. Do you remember when they were doing that?
Yes, and then also after that, Destiny 2 was on PS Plus.
Yeah.
So I have literally giving it away.
So I have a PS4 copy of Destiny 2 sitting on my shelf. And I've wanted to get back into it because I had played Destiny historically on the Xbox, because that's where my brother was, but I really don't use my Xbox anymore. And I have my PlayStation set up, and I'd really like to play Destiny on there. But I was going to ask you this, if they had like, how much DLC do I have to buy? Do I have to redo my character from scratch? Blah, blah, blah. It sounds like they've accounted for that, which is nice.
Yes, yeah. So basically, if you have base Destiny 2, then all you have to do is buy Forsaken, and you get all the DLC up to Forsaken. And then I think there's like another thing I haven't bought for, like, there's like post-Forsaken stuff that you can eventually get. And I don't know how much of that is out or not out, because they've kind of changed the DLC strategy.
I would be wary of buying that right now, given what's going on with Bungie. Just
Yes, yeah,
Just,
that's a fair point. But yeah, one of the interesting things is, we're going to eventually, the next thing we're going to talk about is that news story. But I started playing Destiny 2, like, literally the day before the news dropped that Bungie and Activision are doing the whole weird thing, and with Destiny and the split of the deal. And it just felt like that one of those weird, like, moments of like, oh, well, there's some energy out in the universe that's like, I should probably start playing Destiny because it's going to be important and it's going to come up.
It was your destiny, Sean.
It was my destiny to go back to Destiny. But anyways, yeah. So for those first 2 DLC packs, like, I'm glad I played them because they're like good enough. Like decent Destiny is enough for me. But if you want to skip them, you can skip right past them with that character level up thing. And especially, if you got the PS4 version, that is 100% what I would do. Because like the Forsaken is to Destiny 2 what the Taken King was to Destiny 1. Like, it's that immediate, like, you play the first level of the Forsaken campaign, and it's just, like, night and day, almost, where, a lot of the campaign stuff in Destiny 2 was really good, and much better than what vanilla Destiny 1 was at, which is a pretty sort of, like, cut and paste, dull, like, wave-based mission kind of thing they had for Destiny 1. Destiny 2's main campaign had a lot more interesting stuff in it, but the Forsaken setup is just awesome. And that first mission, which is you and Cade 6, and the Awoken lady that's from the Wolf Hunt DLC or whatever it's called from Destiny 1. Remember that, where you are hunting down the
she's back. Guys. I love that.
Yes,
stuff.
Petra. She's awesome. And so actually Forsaken feels like a soft sequel to that DLC.
Because that's an underrated DLC. Because, you say Destiny 2 keeps getting better and better. Like, that's just been... Every Destiny campaign is pretty much better than the one before it, other than it sounds like the Destiny 2, like, mid-DLC stuff.
Yeah.
But, like, and I remember I knew Destiny was on the right track when they did that, the Den of Wolves thing or whatever it was called. That one was so good. And then we had the Taken King right after that, and it was like, yep, they're on the right track. And I miss Petra. She was cool.
Yes, so yeah, she's back. She's a major player in this, and you and Cade 6 and Petra all are like in the Prison of Elders from that DLC. That like so there's this like big jailbreak that's happening, and you're trying to figure shit out in the Awoken Prince from Destiny 1, who's the guy that's with the queen that gets killed in the opening cutscene for the Taken King. Apparently he's turned evil and he was imprisoned because he was trying to take everything over after his sister died. And so that's kind of the setup. And then if you remember the trailer they showed for the Destiny 2 Forsaken stuff spoiled this, so I'm fine with saying Cade 6 gets killed at the end of that mission. Yes, I suspect maybe they didn't want to keep on paying Nathan Fillion because Nathan Fillion has another new TV show, and it's like, I don't know, maybe it costs more money. I feel like the story of Destiny is the story of them like slowly cutting loose all the celebrity voice acting stunt voice casting they did when Destiny 1 came out, to be like, this is not suitable for a game that we need to keep on releasing regular content for. We can't keep on getting in these like pretty high profile actors to do all this shit. So yeah, Cade 6 dies at the end of that mission, and it's a really awesome cutscene. Like that, the whole story setup works really well. But the best part about Forsaken is that once you do that, the setup for what you're doing post that is you're going after all the sort of like major enemies that escaped from that prison. They're all called Barons. And so they use these sort of adventure structure from Destiny 2, which is what they sort of did the side missions that you can go to in the patrol areas. They use that to sort of set up, you can go and activate all these different adventures in the Reef, and that will send you to hunting down the different Barons, and it's basically like extended boss fights for each of these different characters, and they're all unique. And
it's kind of like Mega Man is what I've heard, like in its structure.
Yeah, it has a vaguely Mega Man-esque feel, but it's also just, it has this really great sense of like this kind of like revenge thing of you're hunting down all these people, because you see them in the cutscene where Cade 6 gets killed. You see all these fuckers and all like their special abilities that they use to kill Cade. And so like they set it up really well. And so there's like one that's like a sniper guy that keeps on setting up all these holographic decoys that you're hunting down. Probably my favorite, just for like the aesthetic and the speed of it, is one where you're hunting down the enemy called, I think, the Rider, and they're on one of those like pikes or whatever that the Fallen ride around on, and so you're like chasing that fucker down on this pike, and it's like they have this whole like motorcycle gang of Fallen assholes that follow them around, and you're fighting them. And yeah, it's just a really, really awesome piece of DLC that uses all the sort of existing pieces of Destiny so well, and kind of finds, as they've always done, as they've like expanded Destiny, is like finding all the cracks in like the template they set up, which is like had so much potential that went so fully untapped. And I feel like as they go on, they keep on finding new ways to be like, okay, this is how we can do something with this setup, because it's such a unique, like, singular kind of game. There's really, even with all the other games so inspired by Destiny, like The Division coming out, nothing has quite like captured that same magic to me as Destiny does, and it's so heartening to see them like finding new ways to really expand out and utilize all the power of what they have built in this incredible sort of base game underneath it all. Some other awesome stuff is they add in a new like sort of tier for all the different subclasses. So if you remember how Destiny 2's class system works, is you have the 3 major classes, so if you're the Hunter, Warlock, Titan. Within those, you have one sort of subclass associated with the different elemental types, Void, Solar, and Arc. And then within that, originally, there were 2 sort of like subtypes of those that were like all the grenade stuff and melee abilities and like your super were shared, but like here you kind of tweak it. So with like the Arc Hunter, one of them is you're like constantly using your like dodge ability to recharge your melee, and it's a very aggressive kind of class. And I think the other one is more focused around you like doing all this stuff to recharge your super and like reloading your gun. And so, different ways to sort of different spins on those classes. So within that structure, instead of it being those 2 forks within one subclass, there's a third one that breaks off, and that third one is much more unique. So like for the Hunter I'm playing as, I unlocked the third one for the Void type class that completely changes what your super is. And so instead of your super being this like magic bow that you shoot that creates a black hole, you get these daggers and you turn invisible. And it completely changes the way you play the character. So they have definitely added out new abilities and stuff. And it's something I'm really excited to then get the third version for my other 2 classes as well, because it keeps it fresh and keeps you playing the character differently. The other major thing they added that I just adore is there's a new weapon type, which is a bow. And they know how fucking awesome the bow is, because as soon as you start the second campaign mission for Destiny 2 Forsaken, Petra just gives you a legendary bow, and it's just like, here you go, just use this fucking thing, and it is my favorite weapon type in the game. It's
now you tell me
awesome.
Destiny has bows. I didn't fucking know that. They haven't marketed this well, because if they told me Destiny 2 had bows in it, I would already have bought this fucking game, Sean.
Yeah, it's so satisfying, particularly because I've only seen the one legendary bow that Petra gives you, so I don't know if this is an ability that every bow can have, depending on like the different mods and stuff. But the legendary bow she gives you has a thing that you can select. Basically, like one of 2 abilities. You can either have the bow be drawn really quickly, or you can pick it where the arrow, once it lands into something, explodes after like half a second, and that is just the most satisfying goddamn thing in the world. And it really works for my Hunter class that already has like all these trap setup, which was how I was playing the game. And so, being able to blow up arrows like behind enemies that have shields and stuff like that is really, really satisfying. Destiny is awesome. It's if you have taken a long break, I would highly recommend going back to it, because it's that long hiatus like makes it so much more fun once you come back to it and sort of re-fall in love with the game, which is exactly where I'm at with it right now.
Yeah, I mean, we are generally fans of Destiny on here who are sometimes confused by the larger business strategy of Destiny, which I think will transition well into this next story, right?
Yes.
But yeah, I'm happy to hear it's good. I really want to play it now that you say that, because the weird thing about Forsaken is, and I think this is why the split we're about to talk about happened, is it had no hype coming out. Like it was not marketed a ton. It was not covered. Like, it was released at a objectively awful time for it to come out, because it just got swallowed up by everything else. Even if, like, I wanted to play it at the time, you wanted to play it at the time, we talked about it off the air. There was no way to do it. There were just too many other games that were new, and we needed to cover those. And so nobody really covered Forsaken, so nobody really played Forsaken. So I do want to get into it and try it, and yeah, looks like you can get all of that for $40. That's pretty good. And if it's on sale, probably less. So I am excited to try it at some point, if I can tear myself away from my beloved Dragon Quest long enough. But I do need like something fun to just play, sometimes on a rainy day on consoles. So maybe I'll put that in, because I do have that disc just sitting there that I got for free because Best Buy had too many copies and put it on a fire sale.
Yeah, and Destiny is just like, it's the perfect game for what I need right now, which is just like, I know what it is, I can play it for an hour and like get a couple of new guns or whatever and like level up my character a little bit and kind of progress in the story, and it's a very easy game to pick up like and play a little bit every night, and it's the place where Destiny needs to be, because that was the setup with like Destiny 2 that never quite worked out, was it just never felt like once you beat that campaign there is any reason to keep on playing the game and do that, like, oh, I'll like, do a couple of rounds of multiplayer and like do a go at the Prison of Elders or whatever, which is kind of my flow with Destiny 1, and like do the daily heroic mission, and none of that stuff was in base Destiny 2. And even though I'm not at the, like, obviously at the end of the Forsaken stuff and at like the end game part where it's more of that sort of like daily grind, I can see where they've put in like the setup and like stuff like the heroic missions to give you more stuff to be able to do once you've beaten the game. So I'm really excited to get to that point.
I'm curious what I will make of it, because, I've said this before, that my opinion on Destiny 2 was, I came away from Destiny 2 thinking Destiny should be a more traditional game, that I think they should drop the larger, like, PvE elements and the big, like, kind of persistent open online world thing, and I think the campaigns for Destiny have been so consistently good for a while. I wish it was more like Halo, where it was just a focused campaign and then a PvP suite, because those tended to be the best things about Destiny 2. And, even if Forsaken doesn't make it, like, change my mind on that, it is still more campaign stuff, so I will probably enjoy it. And sometimes I've just got to make myself enjoy Destiny in that way. But who knows, maybe it'll let me enjoy Destiny in a new way, and I'm excited to see that. But
yeah,
Destiny's whole future is sort of not in doubt, but it's in a new space. So let's talk about the story, Sean. We're transitioning into the news here. The big news of the last few weeks. Honestly, some of the biggest news in video gaming this generation is that Bungie and Activision, they have consciously decoupled, as Gwyneth Paltrow would say. They have decided to divorce. Interestingly, Activision wanted this gone, I guess, because maybe they put up a fight, but they are not keeping the kid. Bungie has sole ownership of the Destiny license. Bungie will be taking over publishing of the series independently. Bungie claims that all of the roadmapped content for Destiny 2 will be completed and released. I think there's some wiggle room there. I've seen some compelling arguments that maybe this isn't good for the future of Destiny 2 specifically, because they might want to start from scratch now that they're on their own. I can see both sides of that argument. We really have no idea what's going to happen here. But yeah, Bungie apparently was very dissatisfied with their publishing arrangement with Activision. There was apparently, when Bungie announced this to the staff, people were like popping champagne and were really happy. And all I could think is like, well, what's the next corporate boss you guys are going to get in bed with and then get really dissatisfied with, and then 5 years later pop champagne when you get away from them? Because that seems to be Bungie's thing at this point. But the difference this time is they got to keep the kids, so they have Destiny. Bungie also has this deal in place with that Chinese company, I forget their name, to make some more mobile online focused stuff. So they've got, the cash flow. Destiny probably on its own does enough to support Destiny, I'm guessing. Obviously Destiny 2 did not sell Activision numbers. I don't think they've ever published exact numbers, but it clearly was underperforming. Again, the fire sale on Destiny 2 made that kind of obvious. But yeah, this is a big story. It has a lot of implications. I think it, along with our next story, just points to what a fucking crapshoot Western video game development has been this generation, which is to say, there's been a lot of good stuff. Destiny is often part of that good stuff, but it's also been a time of like Western developers and publishers really not knowing what to make of the landscape anymore. And this to me just speaks of like, Destiny, the game, is pretty good, and it's in a pretty good place, obviously, creatively. People are very satisfied with it. But Destiny, the experiment of, like, we're going to make these big, persistent, online, open-world games, which everyone is trying, that has clearly failed. And this, to me, is, like, the ultimate evidence of, like, that's not going to be a thing if Activision is, like, burning that part of itself off. But I don't know. It's a really complicated story.
Yeah, so like there's a couple of things there I think it's worth just sort of stating for viewers that maybe, or listeners that maybe don't remember this and weren't following Bungie that closely in the Halo days, is that this, like, is 100% a like deja vu, like double take. It was a complete double take moment for me when I saw the news. Not just because like, oh, this is like a big news story, but in a sense of like, wait, didn't this already happen? Oh wait, no, Microsoft, right? Because so what happened with Halo was Bungie was making Halo basically independently. It was originally going to be a fucking Mac game. Probably partially because it was going to originally be a Mac game. Microsoft bought them, purchased the studio Bungie and the IP for Halo. And basically to make the game the Xbox exclusive that it was, then Bungie like went to work at making Halo, Halo 2, Halo 3. When they got to Halo 3, Bungie was like, we kind of want to do new stuff now. And their original deal with Microsoft, basically all this stuff is in that oral history of Halo that's on Waypoint that they did like a year or so ago. So there's a lot of more detailed information about this. This is kind of me trying to remember this, but it was that sort of setup of, okay, you said you were going to make like 2 or 3 more Halo games, or I think it was they were going to make 2 more. Originally it was going to be that Peter Jackson game and then what became Halo Reach. Eventually that Peter Jackson game fell through, and that's kind of one of the reasons why Halo 3 ODST happened, was to like fill this gap in there, like we need to make 2 more games before we can basically leave. And so then they made Halo 3 ODST, they made Halo Reach, and then Bungie was like, we're out of here. And Microsoft obviously retained the Halo IP. They made 343 Studios and then proceeded to do kind of nothing with Halo and kind of bury it in a weird way. And that's when, so then Bungie left and made Destiny. And then part of the big crazy thing that happened was right when Bungie left, they announced that they were then partnering with Activision. That Activision never owned Bungie, but they were partnered with Bungie for a 10-year deal, which has now been cut short at 8 years.
They were Bungie's sugar daddy. They gave them a lot of money. It was like $500 million, right? It was a huge number.
It was a shit ton of money, but it also came with a specific release plan and strategy, which I think is the main thing that like caused this strife between Bungie and Activision, because, you know, Destiny 1 has like one of the most like infamous, terrible developments in like video games, at least video games that ever came out, right? And there's all kinds of like, you know, Jason Schreier has basically written a book of like different fucking news stories about the development of Bungie and of Destiny and how that went along.
It's also in his literal book, so
yes, it is also in his book. And so there's a lot of material out there in the world to sort of explore what the fuck happened with Destiny and Destiny 1. But part of it was that they were sort of tied to this release strategy with Activision, and that Activision would kind of give them a little bit of rope and kind of push things a little bit, but was more or less firm on like, this is kind of how we need to do it. And it was like all that stuff, if you remember, like the Comet expansion packs and all that shit, like the DLC, because it wasn't just like Destiny 1 will come out, 3 years later Destiny 2 will come out, 3 years later Destiny 3 will come out. It was down to like, and then there will be 2 smaller expansions, and then there will be the Comet expansion, which is the bigger expansion, which has been more or less the release strategy for Destiny as we saw it, but there was so much friction, and like that content release strategy clearly was never quite the right fit for what the game that Destiny was, because you always had those middle expansions where Den of Wolves or House of Wolves or whatever it's called was pretty good and definitely like stretched the mold a bit. But generally speaking, those DLCs, like the Hive DLC, which was the first one, the Dark Below for
That's
Destiny
horrible.
1, is terrible. These 2 DLCs, the Mercury one and the Mars one for Destiny 2, are like not as bad as the Dark Below, but not as good as House of Wolves, partially because like there's not as much room to improve on. So like House of Wolves is partially as good as it is because it's starting from such a deficit. But like they're so unremarkable and they're so slim that it just feels like I'm so glad I didn't play those when they came out, because I know I'd be extremely dissatisfied, because you can clean up the campaigns of both those DLCs in like 6 hours total. Like both of them put together, you could play in one day basically. And there's little like cleanup activities after that, but nothing really substantive. And so it just never felt like the right fit for Destiny. And so that's part of why I think like the Bungie splitting from Activision, like why they needed to do that, is that it feels like Activision was not responsive like to what Destiny actually became, and wanted the like, nope, it's the 2 small expansions, and then the Comet expansion, and then the next game. And, like famously, Destiny 2 got pushed back a year, and they had to put out that Rise of Iron DLC for Destiny 1, which is not that good, especially compared to the Taken King.
I like Rise of Iron.
That. It's good. Like, Rise of Iron's fine, but it's not like... It's clear that that's not what they were, like, where Bungie was wanting to go. They had to make it to sort of, like, get, like, kind of like Halo 3 ODST style. Like, it's a really good game, but it's like... They're making it for this other purpose to fulfill sort of like contractual obligations. And I'm glad that Bungie is now able to sort of hopefully be a lot more flexible with Destiny, that they're out of this deal and get to sort of do what they want with it. That could be terrible. Like, we don't know. Like, maybe Bungie Let Loose is way worse than Bungie associated with Activision and having to stick with that schedule. But it does feel like this is something that needed to happen because... Destiny 3. Like, I don't know what Destiny 3 would have been under, like, the way that things had been going.
It would have been the same as Destiny 2 in terms of the pattern. It definitely needed to happen, but for a second, and I can't believe I'm about to say this, I feel like someone needs to stick up for Activision here, which is that I don't think Activision was unreasonable with the overall expectation of what they thought they were paying $500 million for. And to say they didn't give Bungie rope is wrong. They gave Bungie an insane amount of rope in terms of the amount of delays that this became, the 10-year deal became an 8-year deal, and within that 8-year deal, they got about halfway through the roadmap that they were going to get through. Like, yes, they obviously were inflexible on a lot of points, but that's also what happens when you sign a giant corporate contract for $500 million. Like, Destiny wouldn't exist if Activision hadn't made that, cash influx. It's not Activision's fault that Bungie... Like, if you read the actual story of the development of Destiny 1, like in Jason Schreier's book, Activision's not really a player in it. Like, Activision is not the reason that Bungie didn't know what Destiny wanted to be. Like, Activision was never the reason Bungie had an identity crisis behind this game. They don't enter into that part of the story at all. And so, while I am in general in favor of tearing down corporations every fucking chance we get, the amount of stuff I've seen online before and after this news of people trying to blame every sin of Destiny on Activision is stupid and ill-informed. And, like, part of the reason this divorce makes sense while also being kind of shocking is that this clearly was never what Activision really wanted. And Bungie, while they liked Activision's money, never really wanted to make the game Activision wanted. It was just a bad fit. For all the drama that there was behind Bungie and Microsoft, for a long time, they were very much in line on what they wanted to do together, which was make Halo games, And they were very simpatico on that general relationship until it frayed near the end. But, like, with this, it's, like Activision didn't make them hire Peter Dinklage. No,
I think for me, what it is like once, because you're 100% right that like Bungie did not have its shit together trying to make Destiny. It's more that once Destiny came out and was like a game that like nobody had, again, like it is still nobody, there's no other game quite like Destiny in this really strange mix of MMO, first person shooter, like whatever the fuck like Destiny is. It feels like where it got bad is that Activision, I don't think Activision ever gave a shit what Destiny actually was. Activision gave a shit about, this is the plan, this is what we signed, this is like the DLC strategies that we expected would work when we signed the deal in like 2010 or 2011 or whatever. And when it came to pass as like, this is maybe not like what the best fit for what the game that Destiny became, it feels like Activision didn't care. And didn't sort of, that's where Activision became inflexible, and where it became, from what I understand, what I've seen, it became difficult for Bungie to then adjust what they were trying to do with Destiny and change Destiny and change the structure around Destiny to better accommodate the game. Activision was not accommodating towards that new strategy.
Absolutely, and I think that's completely true. It's also true that no one put a gun to Bungie's head and made them take the deal. Like, at the end of the day, this is a giant inflexible multinational corporation. Bungie took their $500 million, and it's good that they're ultimately breaking up because, again, it is not like, you can say it's unreasonable creatively for Activision to be that inflexible. It's not unreasonable commercially in a lot of ways for them to have had that view.
I think, and for me, the argument is more that, like, if they had been flexible, they would have gained bigger returns. Because the potential, because Destiny has made them a shit ton of money, but Destiny has not fulfilled the full potential of that franchise to make money for them.
No, but I also don't know what the full version of Destiny... Like, that's the thing, is that if Bungie goes on and does not sign with another big publisher and they publish this independently, I don't think Destiny in the form Bungie and the fan base want it to be is ever going to be the juggernaut that would justify its production costs. Like, that's the other thing, is because they had the Activision money behind them, Destiny has been one of the best produced games of all time. Like, it, just the way it looks and sounds and plays and its general polish and its visuals. Like, I would be prepared that if there's a Destiny 3 and it's independently produced, they're not going to have that many resources with it. Like, they're going to have resources, they're not going to have Activision resources for it. And so, there's good and bad here, and there are trade-offs, and I just... You know, it's a really incomplete reading of the story that I'm seeing out there a lot, particularly from the fan base of, like, Activision was the Wicked Witch of the West, and they were the bad guys here, and it's good that we killed the Wicked Witch and got it out of their hands. It's like, Activision paid for it. Yes, it ultimately became something different, but that's also, in some sense, incumbent on Bungie to look ahead far enough and be like, do you think we should sign a fucking 10-year deal when we know how game development works and know it's probably not going to work out that way? Like, and that's what makes me laugh a little bit, is just that this is such deja vu for Bungie. I really do wonder if you and I are going to be sitting here, Sean, in another 5 years talking about their split from EA or something, you know? And actually that won't happen. EA would just shut them down and fire everybody. But I don't know. From Ubisoft. I don't fucking know who it is. But I think it's very possible Bungie just takes the next $500 million that comes their way, gets very dissatisfied with it very fast, and then works really hard to get away from it, because that kind of seems like it's their thing. I don't know. It's a weird pattern to me. And if Bungie really is going to try to make it as an independent studio, that's going to be fascinating. That will change the landscape. That will be an absolutely massive development. And I wonder if that's what we're going to see.
I don't think they're going to self-publish their games. I think it's more just they're not going to commit to a single publisher the way they did with Activision. Part of that was because, I'm guessing that Bungie is going to diversify its output and put out more than just Destiny games. I think they basically have said that. And so that was part of the reason why they were so, the Activision, the relationship with Activision was so strong, was because the only thing that Bungie was basically making was Destiny. I think for sure I would be very shocked if they were independently publishing games, maybe some small stuff, but I am guessing they're going to work with another publisher for Destiny, something with Destiny. I would not be shocked if this is if they got in bed with Epic and moved whatever whatever Destiny 3 is would be on the Epic store or on PC, because that's one of the weird things with this is also Destiny 2 is on Activision's Battle.net system with Blizzard games, and so I don't know what ultimately is going to happen with the PC version of Destiny 2 in regards to that stuff. But this is just theory crafting or whatever. But I would not be shocked if Epic got involved with Destiny 3, and because it seems like Epic is very eager to get a lot of new shit on their store, and it would actually be shocked if it went that way.
It would fit Epic's overall portfolio so perfectly. Yeah. It would make sense actually a lot more than Activision. I mean, I am swayed by the argument that Destiny 2 is probably not long for this world, because they probably want to start with something that is not partially owned by Activision. I mean, what do you think?
I don't know. Destiny 2 still has microtransaction stuff in it, and so I think that they're going to want to keep on that cow going for a while, so that they can have a reliable stream of revenue. Because Destiny 2 is Destiny 2 is going to have the player base it has for a while now. It's the fan base of Destiny is very committed, so I don't think they're going to just move on immediately and cut ties. This isn't quite like what happened with IO and Hitman 1, where Hitman, because it was just another recent split up between developer and publisher. Split up, it's slightly different in that sense. But Hitman was Hitman was not like an ongoing source of revenue, and so IO needed to like immediately put out that Game of the Year version of Hitman 1 as soon as they left from Square Enix, or Square Enix divulged themselves or whatever, or diversified themselves from IO. They needed to put a product in the market with their name on it and like make new deals with publishers and like have a new stream of revenue, so they needed a new product out there. I don't think that's exactly the situation that Bungie is in, because Destiny 2 is going to keep on making them money. And because their current release strategy is also more like, it's not the big DLC chunks and here's like this 4-hour campaign with like 3 strikes in a raid in a new multiplayer mode. It's going to be a more gradual, like, and this is our season of content. Like there's some Black Armory thing that's happening right now that I have no idea what the fuck it is, because I'm not high level enough to do it in Destiny 2. But like that's what their new strategy is more you buy access to like this year of Destiny 2 content, and it's going to be smaller packages as they roll out. Which seems like a more sane way to try to release content for a game like Destiny. So I don't think that Destiny 2 is going to get the cord cut immediately. It's maybe going to be like a year from now that maybe we'll like start saying like, okay, now we're really slowing down on Destiny 2, and pivoting to whatever the next thing is for Destiny. But I don't think it's going to be very soon.
Okay. So I think that about does it for that. We've got a lot more to get to, and I want to make sure we leave enough time for Broly at the end, Sean.
Yes.
So let's move on. The other big news in the last couple of weeks was that, again, through reporting by Jason Schreier, EA has canceled another Star Wars game. This was... I'm going to see if I can do this, Sean. This was
go ahead.
This was the open-world Star Wars game that was announced as being in development after the cancellation of Visceral's Star Wars game, which was the, like, Uncharted-esque game being directed by Uncharted's director, Amy Hennig, for Visceral Studios. Visceral was not just canceled, it was completely shuttered. And then remnants of those team were put onto something that would make use of, I guess, some of those assets, but try to make a new, ambitious open-world Star Wars game. That has now been canceled as well, and apparently now that team is trying to make a much smaller, more focused Star Wars game for release around the next generation of consoles. But yes, this makes yet another Star Wars game EA has published. EA has had the Star Wars license for years now, since like 2014, whenever the Disney Lucasfilm deal went down. And they have put out Battlefield 1 and 2, and I think that's it. And Battlefield 2 was a massive disaster, and they have taken the single most potentially lucrative license in video games, and they have squandered it so hilariously. It is the comic event of this generation to me. It is a fucking laugh riot if there weren't so many people losing their jobs.
Yeah, it's so absurd. So yeah, like you basically laid out the path that this game had taken, because this was like the phoenix or whatever, like rising from the ashes of the Visceral game, and there was like 5 different fucking, I think it was like EA Vancouver, I want to say, was the main studio working on it, but it was like thing that happens now with Activision, EA, and Ubisoft all do this thing where there's like 5 different studios working on every single fucking video game, so it's impossible to know even who's making these things anymore. But yeah, I think it was EA Vancouver, and then like EA Montreal was probably helping on it, and there are probably people on fucking BioWare working on this thing, and Motive, and all these different studios. I wouldn't be surprised if DICE had some people like working on the engine or some shit. But yes, that game that rose from those ashes, that was supposed to use some of the assets in like concept art and materials from Project Ragtag, which was the Hennig game. That game is now dead. And now and so it's like that Phoenix was killed, and now another Phoenix is trying to rise from the ashes of this Phoenix, which is, as you said, it's supposed to be a smaller scoped project that is supposed to come out within a couple of years and have like a 2 to 3 year development cycle, and a very like protracted or retracted development cycle,
which always works. That always works when you try to
EA has had great experiences. Everybody loves Dragon Age 2, another game that was made from a canceled sequel that then was made in like 2 or 3 years. Or fucking Mass Effect Andromeda,
Sean,
or everything.
Sean, what is so baffling about this, other than EA's seeming determination to kill every lucrative IP they have, other than FIFA, is that Star Wars is the one license in the history of video games that has consistently been turned into good, lucrative video games. Like you can look
for like 20 plus years,
yes.
There's a massive history of amazing Star Wars games.
As long as there have been video games, there have been Star Wars games. And as long as there have been Star Wars games, there have been good and also lucrative Star Wars games. And that has never been a problem. I'm sure it took a lot of hard work to make all those Star Wars games by all the various people who made them. But like from the Atari 2600 days to the Famicom to the Super Famicom to everything else past, Star Wars games have come out at a steady clip. They have generally been good. This is not like Spider-Man or Batman or whatever other like, big licensed franchise you want to name that has had kind of an up and down trajectory with video games. Star Wars has been generally up, like plateau basically. It's generally good. You buy a Star Wars game, it's generally going to be pretty interesting. And then EA got it and boom, and that was it. And they, not even that they make bad Star Wars games, they've only made 2, they're both bad. But they can't even make Star Wars games. They can't get Star Wars games made. It's insane. This should be the easiest fucking layup in video games, is to make a fucking Star Wars game. And like, I know there are complications to it. Like Jason Schreier's reporting showed that like one of the difficulties is you have to run everything by Lucasfilm. But again, it's been done. There are over 20 years of history here. You can make Star Wars games if you have the will and organizational skills to do it. And it is insane to me that they don't. And I think you put this next to them killing Mass Effect, seemingly just killing BioWare overall, just running a fucking dagger through the heart of every successful IP they have. And Star Wars has become one of those. It's amazing. This is not like the Activision thing earlier where I'm going to like stick up for No, EA, I don't think they're evil. I think they're just fucking stupid. And I don't get it at this point.
And there's something like, it's kind of fascinating to me how like consistent EA has been for the past like 5 or 6 years, basically for this whole generation, kind of near the end of the last generation. Once they moved out of that cool phase they had where they're doing like Dead Space and Mirror's Edge and like kind of doing different games, and some of them weren't great, but like Dead Space is fucking awesome. And they were like funding new projects. Visceral, of course, being the studio that made Dead Space, which now that studio no longer exists, as people did that, or at different studios or still finding jobs. And yeah, EA, as soon as they moved out of that phase, has just been in such a just bizarre fucking place where it feels like EA wants to be like Activision, where Activision only has like 2 or 3 games really that they put out. They're just like, really now it's like basically Call of Duty. Now that they don't have Destiny, it's whatever Blizzard makes and Call of Duty, and that's kind of all that Activision publishes. But because all those games are so huge, Activision doesn't really give a shit. And it feels like EA kind of wants to be that, but like Battlefield's successful, but Battlefield's not fucking Call of Duty successful, and EA kind of doesn't really have much else because BioWare has had like such a lackluster, like almost non-existent output this generation. Like you have Dragon Age Inquisition, which is pretty good, but a pretty flawed game. Mass Effect Andromeda, which killed that franchise, and neither of us really played. You played like 5 minutes of it or something, and then
I played like
failed.
5 hours. It was bad.
Yeah, it's just like, it just feels like EA is so floundering, and it makes it kind of comical. I guess the other thing they have is Titanfall, but even that's hasn't like ever really blown up.
They have a lot of red in their Excel spreadsheet on Titanfall. They don't have profits from Titanfall.
Exactly. And because that's the other thing is we have that one Star Wars game that had the greatest announcement ever at last year's E3, Star Wars
Jedi
Fallen Order?
It's Jedi Knight Fallen Order, something like that.
I feel like I would remember if they had called it Jedi Knight. It might be like Jedi Fallen Order, but I don't, because Jedi Knight that's its whole own Star Wars franchise.
I'm looking. It's Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order.
Yes, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, which is Respawn's game that they're making.
If I were Respawn right now, Sean, I would just be every day looking over our shoulder, like, have they shut us down yet? Do we still have jobs? We do today? All right, crack another champagne bottle, guys. We're going to spend it while we have it. That game's not coming out.
Yeah, it's like...
No, it's just...
I just don't know what...
I just don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what the fuck EA is doing. They are sitting on the most lucrative entertainment property in the world.
It's like...
they have done nothing with it.
It's like if you were an oil baron down in Texas and you were trying to figure out how to get oil out of the fucking ground, and you just kept stabbing it with a fork and just leaving a bunch of oil in the ground every day while you watch your competitors go sell their oil all over the world, and you're just like, but this metal straw I bought won't get the oil out of the ground. I mean, here's my question, Sean. How much money do you think EA has lost because they refuse to license any engine other than Frostbite?
Oh, God, yeah.
I mean, because their ostensible reason is that if we only use Frostbite, we don't have to pay Epic anything for Unreal, or whoever else they might buy an engine from, right?
Yeah.
And yet, that killed Mass Effect. That killed last generation's massively successful sci-fi blockbuster series. It killed forever an IP. It really hurt Dragon Age. It's destroying BioWare. It's canceled. Like, that's what we've heard behind Star Wars, is that all of these Star Wars projects have been severely impacted by the Frostbite engine not working. It potentially hurt, like, it's hurt so much stuff. Like, the paltry sum they would pay Epic for Unreal Engine pales in comparison to the profits they have lost because they won't use anything other than Frostbite. It's the dumbest corporate decision I've seen in video games ever.
Yeah, because now I'm also, because I was desperately trying to remember other games that fucking EA makes. Obviously, EA does its sports thing, which works in its own weird corner, which is probably like the only reason why EA is maybe still afloat at some point is because they can still make Madden in FIFA, and so that will still make them a lot of money. The other thing that's like, I just remembered, they've spent this whole generation killing Need for Speed as desperately as they possibly can, because they put like 3 or 4 Need for Speed games out this generation. A generation that has one fucking racing franchise to its name basically on consoles, which is just Forza, which is a fucking Xbox exclusive, which is the weakest performer in the console space. And EA is the only other company that is putting out a fucking racing game in that space with those kinds of resources, and they haven't managed to do it. Not once. They haven't put out a single successful Need for Speed game this generation. The most successful one was fucking Rivals, which was the one that came out at the launch of these consoles, and even that one wasn't that great.
No, it wasn't. So yeah, we don't know what the fuck they're doing. I don't know. This is what I mean when I say Western game development is in a hell of a funk. Like, just because there are pockets of good, like I should say Western third-party development. The first parties are generally doing well, unless you're Microsoft, I guess. But like, so no, not even that, because Microsoft is floundering. So no, just Western game development sans a couple of Sony first-party studios is in the weirdest position right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's move on. Sean, let's do some movie news real quick.
All right.
We can do these quick. Spider-Man Far From Home, the next Spider-Man movie, got a trailer. It was funny. It had Mysterio. It looked kind of good. Also, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and Marvel's Spider-Man, the Insomniac game on PS4, have set a ridiculously high bar. And much as I like Tom Holland, they are well under that bar over at Marvel, is all I have to say.
Yeah, that was basically the same reaction I had to the trailer. Like, this looks really good. I'm really excited for this movie. I'm so glad Mysterio is going to be in a movie. And actually, probably the thing I'm most excited for is Nick Fury being in it, because that's my relationship with this version of Nick Fury is from Ultimate Spider-Man. And that, like, Nick Fury and Ultimate Peter Parker was such a cool relationship.
Nick Fury's back in Marvel movies. He missed the entire Phase 3, and now he's back in Captain Marvel and Spider-Man this year, and probably Avengers Endgame.
Yeah, so I'm really, really excited to see Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury, like, playing opposite Tom Holland's Peter Parker. Like, that seems like that's going to be a lot of fun. And so all that stuff looks fun, and like, I really enjoy Spider-Man Homecoming. But yes, Marvel Spider-Man, and particularly Into the Spider-Verse, since it's a movie, and so it's playing directly in the same space, even if it's an animated movie, just so blows Spider-Man Homecoming out of the water. That's not even fair, because it's like Spider-Man Homecoming is a good movie, but like, Into the Spider-Verse is on. It's like, you know, on the relative scales, Spider-Man Homecoming is like Dragon Ball Z Fusion Reborn. Into the Spider-Verse is Dragon Ball Super Broly. It's like just
it's not even Fusion Reborn. It's like movie 3. It's like it's good but not. Because I'm not as hot on Homecoming as some people. I think Homecoming and this entire incarnation of Spider-Man, to me, if it were a TV show and Homecoming were the pilot and we got to go back to it week to week, I would be so much more invested, because it is such an aggressively low-stakes, low-key take on Spider-Man that, like, I don't think it really fits cinema. Like, it fits cinema because Spider-Man is expensive and so you need a movie budget. But, like, if this were a Netflix show or something where you had, like, I guess Netflix doesn't do weekly shows. But, like, if you had some, like, Amazon, it was like a weekly thing where Spider-Man had fun adventures every week, and it was Tom Holland and Ned and everybody. That's what this feels like to me. A movie series where it feels like these feel like the movie versions of a TV show that we're not getting, and I'm sad we're not getting the TV show. Does that make sense?
Kind of. Like, I rewatched Spider-Man Homecoming last year in anticipation of the game and stuff coming out. And I think that's a little bit unfair to the movie because I think the very low stakes kind of thing, like it feels like it's got this vaguely John Hughes thing it's going for with like the high school movie, and I think that works for it. Like, it's definitely like it could use some more ambition in some specific spots, like particularly in like it trying to go for its sort of core theme. I think it could push harder in that sort of area. And there's like even before you get to the movie, there's like the question of like, why not just go with Miles Morales at some point, which would have probably been would have been a better choice.
But then we wouldn't have gotten into the Spider-Verse, so, you know.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, I think that's a little bit unfair to Spider-Man Homecoming. But yes.
Answer me this, Sean. When you think of Tom Holland's Spider-Man, what comes to mind first? Is it a scene from Homecoming, or is it something from Avengers or Civil War?
I mean, I actually immediately thought of the scene where he opens up the door and it's the Vulture. And he's
that's expecting
it to be, he's expecting it to be like, oh, it's the prom thing, and then it's fucking Vulture there. It's like, oh my god, this is awesome.
I like Homecoming. Homecoming is a solid B+. I'm just saying that, like, as much as I like Tom Holland and everything, I don't know. I don't know. I'm in a weird position where I'm shitting on this movie that hasn't even come out. The point is, Far From Home, it looks fun. I'm glad Mysterio is in it. I think Jake Gyllenhaal looks like A+ casting for that. And it looks fun.
Yes. So
we will see it, and we've just been spoiled by so much good Spider-Man stuff. That's my basic point, is that this is a really good take on Spider-Man. It's just not the, like, great take we got from two different things last year.
Yeah. It's also the first superhero movie trailer I've seen since I saw Into the Spider-Verse, so it's like, not only is it Spider-Man, but it's like also any superhero movie post Into the Spider-Verse is like, why? Like, Spider-Verse already did it, right?
Yeah.
Like this whole genre, like, it's good, but I just saw Spider-Verse.
Yes. So I'm looking forward to it. All right, another piece of movie news that, Sean, this is really just for you and me, but I have to talk about this because I'm so happy. The Criterion Collection, who we love, put out their press release for what they are releasing in April. They do like 4 or 5 releases every month on physical media. And in April, Sean, this would have been on, I think, a lot of people's like wish lists of things that they never thought Criterion would actually get, but it would be cool if they did. Criterion has gotten Jackie Chan's Police Story 1 and 2, and on April 30th, we're getting a 2-film box set with these new 4K restorations that have been going around Europe lately, and apparently they're amazing, because those movies have always looked terrible on home video. Mm-hmm. We're getting the original soundtracks, the original Chinese soundtracks, new translations, because those movies have also had bad subtitles in the past, tons of extras, awesome cover art. I am so happy, and I want Criterion to do more Jackie Chan, because it's long overdue.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it was, like you were saying, it's the kind of thing where, like, I never thought about Jackie Chan movies on the Criterion Collection, and then as soon as they announced it, I'm like, of course, yes, how has this not already happened? Police Story 1 and 2 are both fucking amazing movies, and if people have not seen them, now you will be able to see them for the first time in, like, the best way you can see them.
Yes, it's so cool. My only regret is that they don't have Police Story 3, because that's the one that's called Super Cop in America, and that is, in America, you cannot get a version of that in its Chinese soundtrack. It's also like, it was a Weinstein Company release, so it got like 20 minutes cut out of it. I know it's not regarded as being as good as 1 and 2, but I would love it if someone would put that out in a form where, like, I think you can get a Hong Kong DVD that has English subtitles and is the full movie, but it would be nice if, like, Criterion had it so you could just get it here and not have to, like, find it on Play Asia or something.
I mean, I just wanted, like, a Jackie Chan box set that has, like, 20 of his movies on it, you know?
Because we need and that's the thing, is that I think it's Masters of Cinema in the UK, which is sort of like the UK's Criterion Collection. They're getting a bunch of Jackie Chan stuff. Like, they just got Drunken Master, which also had never been out here, I think even on, like, DVD in Chinese. Like, so that's got a new 4K master. Criterion might get that. If not, you can import it from the UK. So it's cool that we're getting these, and just Criterion, just good job, guys. Good job.
Yeah. And hopefully it'll make it easier for me to, like, know which Jackie Chan movies are which Jackie Chan movies, because it's that kind of thing of like what you were saying with like Police Story 3 was released as fucking Super Cop, and like Drunken Master 2 was released over here as Legend of the Drunken Master, like it was the first movie.
The best one is the Operation Condor, where
it's Operation Condor and Armor of God
were released backwards, and so one of them is 2, but it's actually 1. Yeah.
And it's just so confusing, and it pisses me off. And yeah, hopefully like this is just the beginning of working through all of this and getting some high quality releases of those movies over here, so I can have them and get my head straight on which movies are which, and like figure out the Chan filmography, because I've seen most of these movies, but in such a crazy way that I can never remember some of them.
You know, Criterion's getting a lot of this cool like Asian pop stuff. They got the rights to all the Godzilla movies, which were on Filmstruck, which is now dead. Sean, I think we're probably going to get a Godzilla box set this year.
Please, it needs to happen.
It's either going to be summer or November.
I just need Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. I need it so bad. I don't care. I will sacrifice Criterion versions of literally every other fucking Godzilla movie if I could just get an affordable version of Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla with the Japanese language track on it in America. I just need that so fucking bad. It's been my whole life, Jonathan. My whole life.
I'm sorry.
I can only watch that VHS cover or VHS copy I have maybe like 3 more times before the tape just completely dissolves.
All right.
It's not good.
So, Sean, do you want to do some Dragon Ball news?
Yes, let's talk about the Dragon Ball before we talk about the Dragon Ball, Jonathan.
Yes, so this is our last piece of news before we talk about Broly. So if you hate Dragon Ball, you can peace out now, and then you should go watch Dragon Ball and learn what you're missing, because it's great. But first piece of news, Viz Media, which holds the rights to all the Dragon Ball like book materials here, so they do all the manga and stuff, they just announced that they are going to be publishing something called the Chogashu, which is the complete art collection in English. This book came out a few years ago in Japan. Actually, it's more than that. I think it was 2013 because it came out with Battle of Gods. And they're releasing it in English as Dragon Ball: A Visual History. That's coming fall 2019. And I can recommend this, Sean, because look, I have the Japanese version right here. This is Dragon Ball, the Chogashu. It is amazing. It is an art book that contains Akira Toriyama's complete art for the series, minus the manga itself, obviously. It's all the stuff that's not in the manga. So it is every Tankobon cover. It is every illustration he did, like in Weekly Jump. It is all of the promotional illustrations he did.
Nice.
Anything for Dragon Ball illustrated by the man himself, up to and including at the end here, you've got like, if I can find it, his original sketch of like Super Saiyan God is in here for, there it is. You can see that there, Sean. His original sketch of Beerus's homeworld. It is an amazing book. It's huge. It's like 300 pages. It's on really, really nice art paper. It's got this awesome cover here. It's in its own slipcase. I doubt the Viz release will be this nice, but it is nice that they're putting it out over here, so you don't have to import it. And they will be translating it. Again, this is an art book. There's very little text in it. I think there's a message from Toriyama and a brief interview with him. Those have been translated. They're up on Kanzenshu, the fan website has the complete translations of those. So if you want it right now, you can just get it from Japan. But if you don't, it is coming out. It is the complete art collection. It is a great complement to that Dragon Quest book I was talking about. And I think it's cool that Viz is doing that.
Awesome. Yeah.
Now, if Viz could just someday do a competent translation of the manga, and, that'd be great. But they haven't.
Yeah, I don't need it.
Yeah, you don't need it. Other people should get it. But anyway.
Fair
all
enough.
Right. Video game news. Dragon Ball Game Project Z was announced this week by V-Jump, the Japanese magazine, and Bandai Namco. It is a forthcoming action RPG planned for 2019 to be revealed in full in the March 2019 issue of V-Jump, which actually comes out next week because they post-date them crazily because Japanese magazines do it like 2 months ahead. So we will learn more details about this by the time of the next podcast. But they are making an action RPG out of Dragon Ball. That's pretty cool. And Bandai Namco also teased that, quote, the warrior from Universe 11 is joining the fight in Dragon Ball FighterZ, with more details at the World Tour Finals on January 26th and 27th. So, Sean, we are getting a Dragon Ball RPG, and we are also getting, I assume, Jiren. It could be Toppo, but it's probably Jiren in Dragon Ball FighterZ. That's pretty cool, right?
I mean, I think it's because it's not just Jiren. Like, they sort of teased it's going to be Season 2 of Dragon Ball FighterZ DLC. So I'm guessing probably 8 new fighters, because that was as much as what the Fighters pack was for last year. So yeah, that's awesome. I think they also tease there's going to be some Xenoverse news of like some like they've just continually put Xenoverse 2 DLC out. Like fucking Gogeta and Broly are in Xenoverse 2 now. It's like, and I like Xenoverse 2, but at some point, like, and I got some of that DLC. But nope. It's like at some point I'll just wait till they make Xenoverse 3 and have all those characters in that fucking game. I'm not going to pay you like $100 for all these other new characters. But yeah, fucking the age of Dragon Ball continues strong on TV, in the movie theater, and in video games. And
We've got one more video game news here, actually, Sean, which is that Super Dragon Ball Heroes World Mission, which is the latest Dragon Ball Heroes video game. If you don't know what Dragon Ball Heroes is, it is a huge phenomenon in Japan. It is a card-to-life kind of game where you collect trading cards, and then you go to the arcade. It's primarily an arcade game, and you do a fighting game with the cards. And it's also had this is an abridged version of that, obviously. But you have that, and then they've done a ton of video games based on that bring it all home. And this is the first video game based on Super Dragon Ball Heroes, which is like the new version of Dragon Ball Heroes. And it is coming out in English, which I thought would never happen. They've never done any Dragon Ball Heroes stuff commercially in English. And it is coming out day and date worldwide on April 5th for Nintendo Switch and Steam. So you can play it on Switch or on your PC. And it's the first time Super or any kind of Dragon Ball Heroes has been out in English. I've heard mixed things about the game itself, but I have been so curious, and as someone who does not live in Japan, I've never been able to play Dragon Ball Heroes, and we're finally going to be able to. And it just tells you just how big Dragon Ball is right now that they're bringing out this very Japan-specific Dragon Ball thing to the world.
Yeah, for people who don't know what Dragon Ball Heroes is, if you have ever seen, like, Super Saiyan 4 Broly, or Super Saiyan 3 Future Trunks, or, like, all of those, like, crazy, like, this some weird, like, I think there's a Super Saiyan 4 fucking Gohan, they, like, all that kind of weird, like, super expanded universe, whatever, like, what if kind of Dragon Ball stuff, that is not just, like, fan art on DeviantArt or something, but is actually, like, official stuff. That all comes from Dragon Ball Heroes. That's where a lot of the stuff from Dragon Ball's universe of, like, Mira and Toa, like, they're also in that game.
Mira and Toa were from Dragon Ball Online, the Korean
Yes, they're
game.
from Dragon Ball Online, but then also are in Dragon Ball Heroes because a lot of the Time Controller stuff they use in Dragon Ball Heroes also. So it's like all that. So like if you play Dragon Ball Xenoverse, you have like a little bit of a taste of like that side of Dragon Ball. And yeah, I wish that Super Dragon Ball Heroes was coming out on PS4 because that'd be the platform I'd prefer to play it on. But I will probably pick it up on PC just to see.
Yeah, they've always come out on like the handhelds, like DS, 3DS, now Switch. Yeah, I'm very curious about it. I'm glad it's coming out just because even if it's like terrible, I just want to know. You know?
Me too. Yeah, it's just been a thing that I've known about forever about Dragon Ball. There's some weird, crazy fucking thing in Japan. There's some crazy card game.
I have Dragon Ball Heroes cards. You do too. They were in the manga collections. Yeah.
I've got a Super Saiyan Goku and a Super Saiyan Vegeta that can fuse to become Vegito. Like, I have those cards. I know exactly where those cards are. They're up in my room.
Yeah.
It's just like, I don't know what to do with them. I just have them. And they're cool looking, so I've kept them. But it's like, yeah, it's a weird, interesting part of the Dragon Ball like expanded franchise that it's because I put it in like in my mind. It's in the same bucket as that Dragon Ball MMO, Dragon Ball Online. That's like there's all this crazy shit that happened with Dragon Ball that only came out in like Japan or like in Asian territories with online. And I just always assumed I would never be able to have firsthand experience of it. But now no longer. At the very least, Super Dragon Ball Heroes World Mission will be coming out over here.
All right.
I'm not expecting the game to be very good, but I still want to play it.
Yep. All right. Last piece of news, and this will transition us nicely, is the box office numbers for Dragon Ball Super Broly. You ready for this, Sean?
Lay it on me, Jonathan.
This is from Box Office Mojo. The weekend numbers are an estimate because this is Sunday night. We'll have actuals on Monday, but the estimates are... some of these are real numbers, like the weekdays. Wednesday, opening day, it had a $7 million opening day. For reference, Resurrection F, the last Dragon Ball movie, had a $1.8 million opening day. So they tripled the opening day of the previous movie. It had a $10.6 million opening weekend estimated, and in its first 5 days of release, not even counting the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday on Monday, which has not happened yet, $21 million overall in 5 days of release, and it premiered on the charts at number 3 overall for the weekend, behind Glass and some other movie that came out. The Upside, the one with Bryan Cranston and Kevin Hart. Right. It is just ahead of Aquaman for the weekend. A Dragon Ball movie, Sean, is at number 3 on the box office top 10. Did you ever think you would live to see that happen?
No. It's fucking ridiculous.
And yet, the movie itself, it's not a surprise, because it is just that good.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, this movie fucking deserves it. It deserves all the success it has, for sure.
But yeah, we will talk more about that success and what it means. But those numbers, like, again, guys, anime had a moment in the early 2000s where you could get a Pokemon movie in theaters, but that didn't last long. And it's slowly been coming back. Pokemon's in theaters once in a while. Dragon Ball's in theaters once in a while. Even One Piece gets a theatrical release here once in a while. But this is the first wide-release anime thing since, I think, Pokemon 3, the movie. Ponyo had one, too, but I don't know how you count the Studio Ghibli stuff. And it's number 3 for the weekend. It made $21 million in 5 days. And again, this movie cost less than $10 million to make because they don't have crazy production budgets over there. So it's insane. Like, it's a game changer. It's hard to predict what this is going to mean for the overall industry. But to me, this is like when... Do you remember when Funimation first put out the Dragon Ball Z season sets, the orange bricks?
Yes.
They weren't a great product. They were cropped. They had horrible remastering. But it was the first time you could own big chunks of Dragon Ball at once for a low price because they were cheap. And
yeah, I've got like 5 of those in a closet somewhere.
And the Dragon Ball Z Season 1 set famously was like the best-selling anime release of all time, and it completely changed the way anime was released in the West forever. Like, there's never been... Like, before that release in 2007, anime came out in sets of 3 to 5 episodes. After that release, they came out in sets of 13 to 30 episodes. And it was a game changer. I think this is going to be like that. And I'm not sure what that's going to mean, but I think it's that kind of moment.
I agree. I think because it's riding off of a wave of not just like obviously a huge resurgence in the popularity of Dragon Ball, but one of the things that has motivated that is a huge resurgence in the popularity of anime in general through services like Crunchyroll and because everything is getting into anime. Hulu's has been into anime for a while. Netflix is getting more and more into anime, even if they did remove Persona 3 the movie number 2 Midsummer Night's Dream from their catalog, which I will never forgive them for. But then Amazon is into anime. Like, whatever fucking streaming service you subscribe to, there's a couple of dozen anime shows and probably a bunch of them are really good. And yeah, so
I mean, let's just put this another way, Sean. This is a foreign film. Foreign films don't make the box office top 10. They just don't. There's like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon did it. That's it. And like, it was dubbed. It was in theaters in English. But this is still a foreign film that got to number 3 on the box office. That, like, I don't even think the box office, like, prognosticators I've been reading fully understand what that means. Like, that's insane.
Yeah, it's just, it's like, it is hard for me to like really even understand it happening just because it does feel so much like this new version of what it was like when we were kids, when in the like late 90s, early 2000s, when you had that surge, when Dragon Ball originally hit big over here, and then you had stuff like Pokemon that's like, I honestly like don't even usually think of Pokemon as being quite anime because it's like the Pokemon anime felt so Western in a lot of weird ways to me. That's like, this is maybe not the right way to look at it, but it doesn't feel quite the same like category of anime as a Dragon Ball or fucking Yu Yu Hakusho or whatever else was coming at that time. But yeah, this like just like huge interest in anime and in like the Japanese storytelling over here. And it's just like, it's back. And it's like, you can just be into anime and it's fine. And people will just talk about it and talk about watching Sword Art Online or fucking Attack on Titan. Or in this case, I can go to a theater and be in a theater that's like packed full of like dozens of people that are all like, we're here to watch a fucking Dragon Ball movie called Dragon Ball Super Broly. And we are all into it.
Yeah, so let's talk about the movie, Sean. We'll tell you when we're going to do spoilers, but I just want to start with, because you know we like the movie, love the movie. Let's just start with what was your experience like? Because I have a whole story, but I want to hear, you saw it last night. Where'd you see it? What was it like? What was the crowd like? Because there's a lot more theaters showing it in Denver than there were in Iowa, but I know from my brother and from other people, it's also been very crowded here.
Yes, so the theater was totally packed. I went up to the AMC Flatiron Theater that's kind of up near Boulder, so it's up north of where I live. It's a really nice theater. I've only been there a couple of times, but it's, got really nice chairs that you can fucking lean back in and put a footrest up. So I went up there. The theater was completely full. It was reserved seating, so that was nice. But it was just, and one of the things that was interesting, it wasn't just full, like it was clear that there's, multiple generations of Dragon Ball fans. So there are people that are much younger than us that are into Dragon Ball that got into it probably through like either their parents, because you're old enough to have kids, even if we don't have kids. Like, there are people from our generation that are having children that could be into Dragon Ball and have inherited it, or just like, teenagers that watch other shows on Crunchyroll and saw that like Dragon Ball Super was the #1 show on the most popular list on Crunchyroll the entire time that it was up there. And it's still probably in like the top 5 or so. Like Naruto has been consistently forever on Crunchyroll, so it's very easy to get exposed to it. So there were like clearly like multiple generations of fans there. It wasn't necessarily like because I feel like people in Colorado don't generally have like we're all clapping and going crazy while the movie's playing. Like, it doesn't necessarily like that. But since I didn't go to Battle of Gods or Resurrection F over here, and sort of like Resurrection F would be the only one I even kind of considered going to see in a theater. I have not had many theater-going experiences that have been like this. The only one that is fairly equivalent would be when we saw Shin Godzilla. But even that's slightly broader, because at least that's a live-action movie. Like, there's such a weird cultural thing with America and animation, particularly animation that's not necessarily made for kids, that makes it feel like more niche and like dirty or something in a weird way. That whole experience of just seeing the theater and feeling like this is just a big group of people that, like, the only people who are ever going to go see Dragon Ball Super Broly are people who like Dragon Ball. You're not just stumbling into this fucking movie, right? Like, because it, like, unlike Shin Godzilla, this movie would make basically zero sense to you if you had never heard of Dragon Ball, literally had no idea what Dragon Ball is. This movie would be probably more or less incomprehensible for most of it, particularly when people's hair starts going blue.
Oh man,
you're like, I don't know what the fuck's happening.
Sean, if you want a good laugh, go over to Rotten Tomatoes and you can find the critics on there who were sent to review Super Broly because it's a wide release and had no idea, and they are so angry. They're like, this is the worst fucking, like, how can people like this? Like, they're idiots for like, they're so angry. And it's like, oh man, you guys are so out of touch. You guys are so, like, I don't blame you for not liking Dragon Ball, but it's like, it reminds me of how people reviewed the Pokemon movies back in the day, of being angry that there's a group that likes animation like this, Most of the people on Rotten Tomatoes, by the way, they were actual fans because people knew better than to send newbies to a Dragon Ball movie, but there's a couple, like there's a New York Times guy on there, I think, and it's like, it's amazing.
I mean, because it would be like if you watched the X-Files movie that came out between season 5 and season 6 and had never seen X-Files before, and it's like that movie is so steeped in the lore of that series, it is like a huge turning point for like that whole franchise that it's basically like a giant 2 hours episode of the TV show. If you had not seen the TV show, didn't know what it was, and you saw the movie, it would be utterly incomprehensible for you. So yeah, like the sense of being in that theater and being like, these are all people that love Dragon Ball, that like most, if not all of these people have been keeping up with Dragon Ball Super, at least in the English dub, if not like me, have been watching the Japanese version of it. And yeah, it's just like was a really cool, cozy sort of movie-going experience. And then the projection was great. Like it looked awesome. The sound was awesome. Like the whole, it's probably actually my experience of seeing Spider-Verse was really good also, even though that was just my normal theater I went to. But other than that, and even above that, this is the best movie-going experience I've had since I saw 2001: A Space Odyssey in the 7mm screening, which obviously that was special.
Yeah.
So it made sense that one was like really well done, but that's a really nice theater. I wish I lived a lot closer to that theater because it's like a solid 30-minute drive.
Yeah. So I did see Battle of Gods and Resurrection F in theaters. So as a little bit of table setting, I've probably told these stories before. Battle of Gods was a one-night event. It was not a normal theatrical release. It was a one-night Fathom event. And the night I saw it, I mean, I knew this was coming, that Dragon Ball was going to like have an explosion, because when I saw Battle of Gods, Sean, they oversold the theater. Like, there were people sitting in the aisles on the steps, standing, like, that's how full it was. And it was a great experience, even though they projected it like absolute dog shit. It was still fun. And I'd seen the movie several times in Japanese at that point, because Battle of Gods took forever to come out here. But it was a ton of fun. Resurrection F had a, like, limited sort of release where it had like scattershot screenings here and there. I was out of town. I was actually in Canada when Resurrection F came out, not near any movie theaters. So by the time I got back, the movie had already been out for like 2 weeks, and the screening I went to was the last screening in Denver of Resurrection F, and it was still full, and it was still so much fun. And that one was projected well. So now we get to Broly. I was not able to see it opening night because I had a class. That was Wednesday. So I went Thursday night to my local theater. It's the chain out here in Iowa is called Marcus Theaters, and it's very, homegrown, because they even have the owner of the chain has a little video before the movies where he makes really, really bad dad jokes. And it's like, thanks for coming to the movies. It's awkward. And it's generally an okay theater, but we'll get into the presentation issues in a minute. But I did, I got to the theater early. A lot of people were getting there early, got my ticket. This does not have reserved seating. So I went inside, got a good seat. I was happy. Over the next half hour, that theater filled up. It was one of their biggest theaters, like hundreds of seats. It was completely full by the time the movie started. And when the movie started, there were still people coming in. I had to get up. Well, there was one funny moment where I had to get up. It's the scene, this is not a spoiler, early in the movie, Frieza is coming to planet Vegeta, and King Vegeta has to like get on his knees and like bow to Frieza. And I had to get up, and I realized I was near the front of the theater, so I was blocking people's views, so I got down on one knee. And I didn't mean to, but I looked like I was cosplaying King Vegeta for a second, because people were trying to get into my row, and so I had to like get out of the row, and then I'm like, oh fuck, people can't see the movie, let's get down. And I just instinctively went into the position of the guy on screen. So, anyway. But, yeah, so that was my first night with the movie. I should say, this theater was planning on showing the movie only 4 times over the week. Like, they had a Wednesday screening, a Thursday screening, and then one on Saturday, one on Sunday. They expanded their Saturday and Sunday. They now were showing 4 screenings a day. So they were like, oh, we need to make more money with this. Like, this is a lot. But there was an issue with the sound. So let me get into that. The visual presentation was okay. That theater has okay projectors. They did a weird thing where they had it on a 2.35 to 1 screen, which is the big widescreen, and they just had this movie, which is 16:9, 178 to 1, projected on that with like black bars, which was lazy. They could have just masked the screen. That was stupid, but doesn't ruin it. But that was there. But the sound, the best way I can describe it, Sean, is that it sounded like someone was playing Dragon Ball Super Broly off of their iPhone, had maxed the iPhone up to maximum, and just put it at the front of the theater. And so it was muffled, it was quiet. I'm pretty sure what it was is that this was a surround mix, like 5.1, and all we were getting was the center channel. So we weren't getting the surrounds. So like we could...
Oh, yeah, that's bad.
We could hear the dialogue, but like the reverb on the dialogue wouldn't be there, which means it's really muffled. We could get some of the music, but there's a lot of the music, like, and I knew this because I had the soundtrack on my phone. I got out of the movie, put in my headphones, listened to a track, and was like, yep, that wasn't in there. Like, that just, like, I heard some of this, but there are, like, effects in this song that weren't in the movie. And when I saw the movie again, I heard them. There were sound effects, like, now that I've seen the movie twice, when they're in the ice, on the ice continent. Again, this is in the trailer. There is, as you would expect, a sound effect of, like, whooshing noises, of wind going by. We didn't hear that. It was in the channels that weren't there. And it was also just the volume was really low. When the fighting started, it was weird because there would be... This is a movie with a lot of, like, sound and fury and spectacle, and you would have the big punches and stuff, but no sound effects on it. It was the most awkward thing in the world. It made it really difficult to enjoy the movie. It made it hard to follow, because this was the weirdest thing, is that this crowd was ready to have fun. Like, we wanted to cheer at the movie, but everybody... It was this giant theater where everyone was being deathly quiet to try to hear the movie. There's one moment near the end, there's a joke involving Frieza that is fucking hilarious, and we all broke out at that, and we missed several lines after that because you just literally couldn't hear it. So I complained to the manager afterwards, and he didn't really understand it, and this is the state of theaters these days, Sean, is he said, well, we have a technician coming next week, maybe we'll have him have a look at it. They have no one on site who can fix this, and that's true of most movie theaters now.
That's really bad.
Yep.
That's I'm trying to think of, like, if I've had a worse movie-going experience, other than when they played the wrong version of The Hobbit, and so it was like, I think it was supposed to be 3D, and they were not playing the 3D version, and so it was just like watching a dimmed version of The Hobbit. That's probably the only thing I've seen that's been equivalent to that.
Yeah, I mean, I've had worse than this, because I've also had sound and picture completely messed up. This was like, the picture wasn't great, but it was there. The sound just wasn't there. So, I didn't quite know what to make of the movie. Again, the movie, like, you need to commit yourself to it. It's not just fan service Dragon Ball. So I really didn't know what to think of the movie coming out of it, and there was this problem with the sound. So, like, I had the weirdest experience, Sean, where I felt like I had seen the movie in so much as I knew the plot and knew what it looked like, but I felt like I also had not seen the movie. Because I hadn't. And
it would be like if you watched the movie over someone's shoulder on, like, an airplane.
Yeah.
Right? That's like, and then there were subtitles. It's like, I understand the plot. I see it looks really nice, but, like, the effect of seeing the movie is not there.
So it was like, I had been so excited, I'd been so primed, there was no, like, movie this fucking year I'm more excited to see, and yet I saw it and didn't see it, and so, like, I had trouble sleeping that night, I couldn't think about other things, I went to work the next day, got my work done, and then I decided, okay, it's the start of a long weekend, I have no immediate responsibilities, what's the nearest other theater playing this? Because I'm not going back to that theater to see it, right?
Yeah.
They don't even have their technician coming until next week. So I get on my phone. The nearest theater playing it was 50 miles away in Davenport, which is eastern Iowa. And it was a Cinemark, which we have a lot of those in Denver, and I like Cinemarks. I trust Cinemarks. I generally have good experiences there. I'm like, okay, I can trust that. I will drive to that Cinemark. So when I got off of work, I came home really quick, changed, put my backpack away, and then got back in the car and drove. It wasn't a full hour. It was like a good 45 minutes to Davenport, went to this theater, went in, saw Dragon Ball Super Broly, and it was great. Because this theater had like really nice, bright, vivid projection. They had their screen masked intelligently. You know, it looked great. The sound was like loud, and it was big, and it was like, yeah, and I could hear the whole movie, and I loved the shit out of it, and that was fantastic. So, and in that second screening, this was like a Friday afternoon, and that theater had like a full day of screening, so this one was not like packed or sold out. But there were a lot of people, and one of the interesting things is there were families with kids. So like I was hearing kids react to it, which was kind of fun. Like, I'm so glad there are still new Dragon Ball fans being made, you know? It's not just us old guys in the theater. So, yes, so that's just how I had to see Dragon Ball Super Broly because of the sound issues. But since I saw it twice, I got to see it, you know, I know the movie pretty well now. And I also really, I don't think it's a perfect movie. I have some things I could quibble with here and there, and I'm interested to talk to you about them. Overall, this is fantastic stuff. It is so good. My biggest complaint, honestly, is that I think it's not long enough, and I think it's a little too fast in places, and I really desperately hope they did what they did with Battle of Gods and do an extended version, because Battle of Gods was kind of that way, where its 85-minute version feels like it's missing some things, and then its extended cut is like perfect. It's like got everything you want in there, and I kind of hope they do that for Broly, also because I just want more of that animation out in the world. But yeah, let's talk about the movie now, Sean. I think we can go ahead and say spoilers from here on out, so check out if you don't want to hear the spoilers for Dragon Ball Super Broly. But where do you want to start with this movie, Sean? There is so much to deal with. There's like 3 very clear acts. There's the backstory act. Like I would call it a prologue, except it's a third of the movie, so I don't think that's fair. There's the act in the middle where all the chess pieces are being put on the board, and then there's the fight. And they're all fucking great. I've been going back and forth on which part is my favorite. We could talk about the amazing animation. We could talk about the surprisingly fantastic soundtrack, which I did not know Norihito Sumitomo had in him. No knock on him, just his music has not been this good up to now. We could talk about the characters. There's so much with this movie. Where do you want to begin?
Let's talk about the animation first. Because I think that's part of, you know... No, like, Broly is the star of the movie. As I was going to say, the animation is the star of the movie. Broly is the star of the movie. It's named after him, and he's really good, and they fixed Broly. So I'm not going to take away that from Broly, because he is also the main character, I think. But... like maybe like the second billing of the movie is just the animation.
I'll say the animation is the star of the movie. I'm okay with that because Broly only looks as cool as he does because of the animation.
Sure, there you go. But yeah, it's such a completely different style for Dragon Ball, and if you've only seen the trailers and think you know like what the movie looks like, you really don't, because Like, because it looked like, okay, cool, like, this is a much leaner looking Dragon Ball. It's got, like, a really smooth look to the animation that's really cool. That just looks great. Like, it has a lot more of that kind of, like, manga look to it than Dragon Ball Super had a lot of the time, even than a lot of, like, what Dragon Ball Z had, and that's really cool. But what you don't really see in the trailers, other than in a couple of shots in some of, like, the Gogeta trailers and stuff, is when they go for it with the animation, it is very experimental. It's very stylized, way more stylized than it looks in the shots in the trailers. There's a lot of really just crazy directorial choices they make of, like, extended POV shots from, like, there's, like, one shot that lasts, like, 30 seconds. It's all animated from Broly's, like, literally from Broly's perspective.
That might be my favorite shot of action in the movie.
And just, like, lots of really extreme close-ups. It does not feel like a Toei produced thing of animation, movie, TV show, whatever. Like, it feels more like, if you watch other anime stuff, it feels more like something that would maybe come from, like, Madhouse or Bones, or maybe even, like, Studio Trigger. Like, it's got, like, this really kinetic, frenetic pace to it, and when the fighting goes, they are fine with, like, distorting things in the image, making things big or crazy, or going super close in on people's eyes, and having the camera move wildly around and gesticulate in really crazy ways, but it's all really calculated and really, like, it's all used for a purpose. It's not just, like, being crazy and stylistic for stylistic sake. It is trying to communicate something about the power of the characters in the fight, and it's giving you such a different perspective on a Dragon Ball style, super crazy over the top martial arts battle that I've just never seen from Dragon Ball. I don't think I would want every Dragon Ball thing to be in this style necessarily. Whenever the TV show comes back, I wouldn't want this to, like, every single episode to have this style to it. But for this movie, it's such an incredible look, and it's such an incredible perspective and take on what Dragon Ball can look like, that, like, I was just floored constantly once like shit got real.
Because Dragon Ball has always been a well-animated... It has not always been well-animated.
Fair enough, yeah.
But it has been, like, good animation, sometimes great animation, but it is not... You would never point to Dragon Ball generally as the top tier of Japanese animation. Like, no. It's not Akira, it's not Studio Ghibli, it's not a Madhouse production, as you say. You wouldn't really... it's not One Punch Man, like, whatever you want to point to as, like, this is what, like, the best of the medium is. This is up there, though. And there's two things going on, because there's the art style itself, which I do want Dragon Ball to use moving forward, like the character designs and the general way they do character outlines and everything. Like, it's the best Dragon Ball has ever had, maybe outside of the Minoru Maeda stuff. We'll get to that in a second. And then there's the, like, directorial style and the animation itself during the fight, which I agree, if they did that every week, it would, one, they would run out of money, and two, it would get old. But, like, for this, it is such a break of pace. It really throws you for a loop. And, like, I had trouble processing it the first time a little bit, because it is so different, and I didn't fully appreciate it until the second time. Now, some of that is due to the sound that I had, but some of that is just due to it's really different. So, I mean, we should back up and do a quick backstory on why is it so different, and that's because this is the first outing by the new director of animation, Naohiro Shintani. And Dragon Ball in the past has had only 3 people fill this role in the entire franchise. And you might think, oh, director of animation, character designer is their other title. Well, wait, why do they need that? Akira Toriyama is the character designer. He came up with the characters, right? Well, Akira Toriyama drew the manga and all that stuff, but you need someone day-to-day on the anime who takes all of those ideas that Toriyama has and translates them into movable, workable drawings for an animation, right? And there have been 3 people who have done that in the past. The first, and I think who many people would say has been historically the best at this, was a guy named Minoru Maeda. He actually did all of the original Dr. Slump anime. Then he went on and did all of Dragon Ball, and then he did Dragon Ball Z up through the end of Frieza. He left between the Frieza and Cell arcs. But that means Maeda was the guy who, like, was in charge of character designs for the anime, in charge of the overall look of the animation. He also drew all of the material for, like, extra releases like movie posters, books, anything like that related to the anime that they would have put out. That was Maeda. He was really good at I think, mirroring Toriyama's early art style. Like, if you go back and look at, like, Dragon Ball Z Movie 1, Dead Zone, that is, like, prime Maeda to me, which is those, like slimmer, more rounded character designs. They look really good. Then there were two guys. Maeda did so much work that two people had to take over for him, and that was for the rest of Z and then GT. It was Katsuyoshi Nakatsuru and Tadayoshi Yamamuro. Katsuyoshi Nakatsuru stayed on through like the mid-2000s. He famously did all the animation for, I think, the Dragon boxes, like the cover art and stuff. And they're really nice. Nakatsuru is an amazing artist. And then Tadayoshi Yamamuro has been of note lately because all of the 2010s Dragon Ball stuff, like Battle of Gods On, has been Yamamuro's domain. He was the lead artist on Battle of Gods. He directed the film Resurrection F, which is really rare for a character designer to direct, and then he was the lead artist on Super. So those have been the three guys, and that's why Dragon Ball has kind of always looked similar-y. Yamamuro, I think, is really talented. I think a lot of people would say he has maybe the least interesting style of those three guys, which is why Super is not always the most interesting version of this, but they finally hired a new person, and that's now Hiro Shintani, who specifically, like, his goal was, I want to bring this more back to Toriyama's drawings. I want to make it look more like drawings. He said he wanted to update it for Toriyama's modern art style, which, if you read something like Jocko the Galactic Patrolman, is quite different than what he's had in the past. It's a fusion of his other art styles, I would say. And so now you have Hiro Shintani, and you also have the director of this film, Tatsuya Nagamine, who also directed the Universe Survival arc of Super, clearly has a vision for this. Because the Universe Survival arc also started playing with the art style in some big ways.
Yeah, you can definitely see, like, there's a bridge between the Jiren fight, particularly once you get near the end, in some of, like, the close zoom ups that are, like, close-ups on people's faces and characters zooming towards the camera. Like, some of those things carry over and, like, extend and, like, go beyond, like, what they were doing in that Jiren fight in this movie.
Yeah. And so now you have Dragon Ball Super Broly, and I think you put those two guys together, Shintane and Nagamine, and who knows, maybe Toriyama might have had influence on this, I don't know, but it has such a vibrant new look. It is the hardest break with the past Dragon Ball has ever made in animation. It is just a completely new art style. It looks more than ever before like moving drawings to me, you know? Yes. And what I think works so well about it, like I said on Twitter, I think Shintani is the best at this art design role of anyone in this franchise since Maeda. And I say that because what I think he does is I think he combines the kind of old school handcrafted aesthetics of old Dragon Ball and Z, which we all love because they look so, you know, there was no digital manipulation of those. People had to draw them and paint them, and they didn't look, they had grain, and they looked filmic, and they looked great. And I think, you know, Battle of Gods, Resurrection F, Super, all have varying degrees of good animation, but they look very plasticky to me, and I think the digital coloring kind of looks soulless. And I think that's one of the major changes they made in the Universe Survival arc, is they changed the digital post-processing so it looks better. But this movie feels like it combines all those things we loved about old school Dragon Ball, and that it looks earthy. There's like visible grain in the image. There is clear, like, textured lines on the characters. Like, the lines look like ink or pencil. They don't look digital to me at all. The colors are much more earthy, and like they look like what you would get in a manga or in something printed on paper. And then you combine that with all the things we can do with digital technology now in animation and make it so fluid and so fast and throw so much at you. And it feels like this beautiful combination of old and new. And it just feels like the best Dragon Ball could possibly look in animation in the year 2018/2019. And I think that's an amazing accomplishment.
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm 100% with you that, like, I want this. I think earthy is use that word, and I really love it. It's like this very earthy aesthetic for Dragon Ball, and like bring that quality back that used to be there, and push it forward, and have that, like, whatever the next step is, retain that. But yeah, it is that combined with the, like, really just fucking 100% going for it that they do. Like there's no. You know, it's a very long fight. It's a solid, probably like 30 minutes of this movie is that fight. That's, you know, it's good that they have it. It's multi-staged. It's not just Broly versus Goku, and that's the whole fight. There are different combatants go in and out, and it changes styles as the fight goes on. But it's like once that fight happens, they are never just like relaxing. They're always pushing it and doing something new and like ratcheting things up and up and up. And it's one of the things that's really remarkable about this movie, I think, is that even though the fight is like 30 minutes long and is thus like quite a bit longer than the fight in the Broly the Legendary Super Saiyan movie, this like 3 seconds of the fight in this movie is better than anything in the past Broly movies. Like, it's so powerful, it's so energized, it's so creatively energized. Like, it's not just that like the drawings are so energized and so frenetic and capture so much of the speed and energy of these characters, but there's just a sense of like passion and creativity behind every single shot, every single choice of how we're going to try to portray this fight and move things in different ways and use characters in different ways and express the anger of Broly. It's just the directorial choices and the stylistic choices of this movie combined with the aesthetic, like the core aesthetic of the characters and of like the look the movie's going for. Those two things just make this movie feel like on one end completely unlike anything that Dragon Ball has ever been, and on the other hand like something look that Dragon Ball has always kind of been going for in different ways. And it's that kind of thing of like, it almost like looks like the way you kind of imagine Dragon Ball looking if you haven't seen it in a long time and you're thinking about some of those crazy fights. Like when you actually watch the fight between like Goku and Cell in the Cell arc, like there's some really good stuff in there, but a lot of that is just like characters looking at the sky and there's like a boom, 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 and they're moving too fast than you can see. Here, they don't really take that cop out of like, oh, the characters are moving so fast you can't see them, because the camera is with the characters, so it's like, it doesn't matter with, like, I'm sure Bulma is just looking at the explosions in the sky and she has no idea what's happening, but you're not looking at her perspective, you're with the characters as they're experiencing this fight, and that commitment in this movie is amazing.
And that connects to something else I wanted to say about the animation, which is that, that style necessitates a lot of CGI. There's a lot of CGI in this movie because you cannot do camera movements like that in hand-drawn animation. It's just literally impossible. And Battle of Gods and Resurrection F had a fair amount of CGI here and there as well. And it looked really bad in those movies because it just clashed so much. You just could always tell when CGI was breaking into our nice hand-drawn movie, and it just looked awful. It often does. Like, this is a problem anime has, is that anime has embraced a lot of digital technology, but it is not 3D. So when you put 3D elements in, it just looks stupid. This movie has a lot of 3D elements, but because of that basic art style, you always have something in the image you're coming back to. So, like, you can have, like, a big 3D environment. Like, when Broly blows up the entire ice area and now it's a volcano and shit, there's a lot of CGI there, but Broly and Goku still look like they have just stepped out of the manga, and they are hand-drawn creations who, again, look earthy and like we could reach out and touch the drawings, and that is so awesome to see. And they've even done stuff like, someone pointed this out online and then I saw the movie again and I totally noticed it, and it's awesome. There are moments where the character models go full CGI because they have to for what they're doing, and what they've done very clearly is they took the CGI model and rotoscoped on top of it. They drew over it. So they drew an actual image of Goku like they would on pen and paper over the CGI. So it's like a CGI skeleton with nice hand-drawn animation that fits the aesthetic of the movie over that. It's still jarring in some moments, and it's frequently supposed to be jarring, but it's actually very similar to what Arc System Works does with Dragon Ball FighterZ, in how there is this hand-drawn component to everything, so that it never feels like you're stepping out of that and making these wild stylistic breaks that don't fit the aesthetic. There are big stylistic breaks, but they feel like an extension of the aesthetic, not we're throwing the aesthetic out for now.
Yeah, exactly. Like, definitely the CG integration is not always perfect. It is that thing of like, it feels like anime is still working towards finding a way to blend those two things more seamlessly, but this is the best integration I've seen of it, and I think you captured it right, that it's like, a lot of times when you're watching an anime, whether it's a movie or it's a TV show, and there's like a major element on screen is CG, not just like a car in the background or something like that I never care about, but like, I was just watching a show called Overlord on Crunchyroll. I was catching up on the most recent season that aired, and that's a show that like, sometimes the animation looks good, but like sometimes they have these like zombie creatures on screen that will be CG, and it just feels like you're like drop kicked out of the show, because it's like, this just so clashes. Some of the CG of that show actually kind of got okay, but a lot of times it's just like, this just doesn't fit. And so it's like, it doesn't, like, I don't mind, like, me being able to notice that it's CG, because I'm 26 years old. I've watched a lot of movies. I've watched a lot of animation. I will probably be able to tell when it switches to CG stuff. But as long as it matches and it doesn't feel like this is something that is like you pulled something from something completely different and just shoved it into this image, as long as it feels like this matches the aesthetic of what I'm going for and feels like it could exist in the aesthetic that I have seen up to this point, then I can accept it and move on. And I feel like that's the hurdle that this movie overcomes, and that's pretty huge.
Oh, it's absolutely huge, and it's a wonder to behold, and we're focusing on the fight here a lot, and we'll get back into it later. But it should be said, the animation in this is stunning in every shot, the entire movie, whether there's a big battle going on or not, which the first hour of this movie there is not. It's consistently the colors and the texture of it and just the quality of the drawings. It looks so good. The statistic I saw was that I think Resurrection F had a budget of around $5 million, and this movie had a budget of around $9 million, which is a big jump for animation. And I mean, that's almost double, or it's at least a third more. And you can just tell that the love and care went into this in every frame. And I agree, it's very out of character for Toei, who are cheap bastards generally.
Yeah, they're like, one hand cheap bastards, but it also just feels like their products, whether it's movies they produce or it's TV shows, just feel like they fit a very standard stylistic and directorial template.
Yeah.
And it's like, and that can be fine. Like, I love the way that Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, like the classic show, feels like they animated what could be like a classic, like, Kurosawa movie. That's one of the reasons why that classic, the Kikuchi score, works so much, is the show was scored that way. It was kind of shot and directed that way. But I do really love this movie because, obviously when the fight shit happens, it goes super crazy with it because it has the opportunity to. But it's, like, stylistically and directorially experimental all throughout. Like, even in talking scenes, in the whole opening segment, a lot of that stuff when Frieza shows up, there's a lot of really interesting, weird choices, and like particularly when this movie just loves using super crazy close-ups on eyes for characters. That's like, anime already loves close-up on eyes, like, I get that, but this is like, no, you're going really deep and like really focusing on it as this like directorial, or like this like aesthetic like obsession or fixation on something that I really loved, and it just felt like this movie had a spirit to it that was very unique, not just for Dragon Ball, but for like animated films in general. It felt like this thing has an aesthetic that it commits to, that is very much its own.
Yeah, I mean, this is some of the best animation I have ever seen, and it just, for it to be in the world of Dragon Ball that I love so much, it's overwhelming at times, Like, it's overwhelming to see, like, Frieza drawn in the early parts of this movie when he is his base form from from earlier in the story, back on the Namek arc. And, like, they've played with his color scheme a little bit, but they've also drawn him. He just looks so much more like my memory of the manga and of the drawings than kind of the, final processed version you'd get in the anime, which looked really great too. And I'm not putting down the original anime, but just there's something about seeing it done with this much love and care. And we haven't seen that on Frieza before. It's glorious. It's just glorious.
Yeah. It's one of the things I love about the movie is that there's a couple of moments, there's like particularly two moments where there's like the big juicy montage moment where they do the time skip to the present day, where you get to see a bunch of iconic Dragon Ball stuff very briefly animated in that style. And then there's another moment when Goku is talking to Broly about like, you're not our enemy. I've fought a lot of bad guys, but I don't think you're one of them. And then there's this quick shot of like all the major villains in Dragon Ball, and like, I love, like, a part of me feels like they put both those in just to be like, hey guys, look how fucking cool all these characters look drawn this way. Like, there's a quick shot of like Super Boo or something in that like lineup of villains. I'm like, awesome. Like, I can't wait till I have the Blu-ray so I can freeze frame and just look at that image for a while and be like, that's a really great looking version of Super Boo. I'm just glad this is it. They didn't need to put this in the movie, but I'm super glad they did.
Oh, absolutely. I think even the flashback Frieza has to Krillin getting blown up is reanimated, because in the show they would have just used footage usually from Dragon Ball Kai, which is its own bag of worms, but it's just just little brief snippets of like, oh, what if they reanimated Dragon Ball? They don't need to. The original is great, but like, oh man, that looks good.
Yes, yeah, I do really love the brief. I just like getting to revisit the moment when Krillin explodes.
Yes.
Like, let's go back to that moment for a second, because it also is just like great payoff in the movie.
Yes. Oh man. Okay. So let's talk now about all the other shit. It's so good. I mean, while we're staying on style, I do just because I don't want to forget it. The score to this movie is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Norihito Sumitomo took over musical duties on Battle of Gods. He started there, and he's composed everything since. Dragon Ball had kind of been in the wilderness because Shunsuke Kikuchi, who was the original composer of the anime, I don't know if he's retired, but I haven't seen him work on anything for a while. And then the kind of natural successor was a guy named Kenji Yamamoto, who did all the video games, and then did Kai. And then while Kai was wrapping up in Japan, its initial arc, it turned out, I mean, everyone had known this for years on, like, the message boards, but Toei figured it out that he was a plagiarizing monster. And, like, a lot of his music was just, like not... It was like he plagiarized, like, Danny Elfman and Pink Floyd. Like, there's this... I think it's Super Butoden 2 on the Super NES. Cell's theme is just like Pink Floyd's The Wall or something like that.
Yes, yeah.
It's like... So he was very brazen about it. So they had to fire him. That's why Kai exists in such a weird form musically. And so Sumitomo kind of became the new guy. And he did Battle of Gods, he did Resurrection F. When Super started, he was the composer on Super. He did the Boo arc of Kai, which we got as the final chapters. And a lot of the music for the final chapters was reused in Super, particularly the Tournament of Power. A lot of that is from the Boo arc of Kai. And I think we would both describe Sumitomo as hit or miss. Like... When he hits, I think it can be pretty effective. Like, there's good moments throughout his run. Like, there's a piano lick that is in Battle of Gods when Goku has given up against Beerus and they're up in space and just having their conversation. That is one of my favorite Dragon Ball musical moments. But there's also just some, like, really dumb, goofy, cheap-sounding music in that movie. Same with some of the other films. Super kind of waxed and waned. And then I think Future Trunks arc, good music. Tournament of Power, generally great music. But it's still kind of hit or miss. This movie is just a great film score. It has really clear, identifiable themes. It builds them in really interesting ways. There is a track on the soundtrack called Broly versus Gogeta Battle Theme or something like that. And that's one of the ones that has the cool, weird vocal things they do too, where it's like, Super Broly Gogeta Sugoi Power. And
there's just, like, chanting in some of the tracks during the fight.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's part of where, like, the movie is stylistically experimental across the board, because it's like, I've never, like, it's, I've heard soundtracks that do things sort of like that, but nothing that does exactly what this soundtrack does in those moments.
But I was going to say, that track is combining three major motifs. There's a theme for Frieza and his, like, army. There's a theme for Broly, and then it's also combining the theme Blizzard by Daiichi Miura, which is the theme song for the movie that's in the credits, which is just a fucking awesome song, too. And it's combining all of those. And it's like, that's part of why the fight has the impact it does, is the music is driving you along in the way good movie composing does. It's an amazing soundtrack, because I've listened to the soundtrack now, and it's really, really top-notch film scoring, and I feel like Sumitomo has kind of, like, come full circle, and I'm like, he owns the music of the modern-day franchise now in a positive way.
Yeah, because it definitely felt like he got better and better throughout Dragon Ball Super, to the point where, like, in the Tournament of Power, particularly, like, the final stretches, like the last dozen episodes or so of the Tournament of Power, like, some of the stuff he does with the music is just incredible. And so this feels like a natural extension of it. But yeah, it is particularly the way that the score uses interlocking themes, and there's just some, like, really distinctive, iconic little melodies. I think probably my favorite is that, like, that sort of Frieza Broly theme, the ba-dum, ba-dum, like, that theme is, whenever that plays, it's so good. Particularly when Broly is reintroduced after he's grown up and he, like, flies into the camera, and that, like, that 4-note melody just, like, swells up. It's such a powerful little bit of film scoring, but it's that kind of thing that, like, we've talked about this all the time on this podcast, but so many movies have just, like, kind of abandoned using that style of film scoring for something that's far more generic and just kind of dull. And this movie does not sleep on its music. It's not just like which is kind of what I would say for, like, a lot of Battle of Gods and Resurrection F. This is like, the score is whatever it is. Here it feels like the score is like a vibrant, vital part of what the movie is doing, and it's constantly contributing, and it's constantly evolving, and it's very intelligently put together using the different themes. If there's one thing I wish the movie did, is, and this is probably mostly just because I watched the trailer too many times, but I so associated Super Saiyan Blue Gogeta with that Blizzard song because it's in that really awesome trailer. That's the trailer that plays whenever I fucking load up Dragon Ball Legends on my phone, so I've seen it a lot. Because it's just always a fun little, like, fucking minute of... It's a fun way to spend a minute of your life is just to watch that trailer. That I was kind of bummed that song didn't just start playing once the Gogeta fight started. That's probably when I watched the movie again. That will not bother me at all. But it was something where it's like I was kind of expecting it and be like, oh wait, of course that's just the song that plays over the ending credits. And I did notice that some of the music from the song was in the score. But I was like wanted it to be like full Ultimate Battle from Dragon Ball Super. Just like let's just fucking go.
It kind of is. It's hard to notice your first time, definitely. But it's like it's not the vocals. It's not like a full insert song. But in that big track for the main Broly versus Gogeta fight. There's a big swell of it. It's the main melody, orchestral. It sounds amazing. I think in the movie it comes in really prominently when the two new characters, what are their names?
Chila.
Yeah, Chila and
I had it up. It was Chilai and where's Limo.
Yeah, Chilai and Limo are running down the hall being like, we gotta save Broly, let's use these Dragon Balls. It comes in there. And it continues throughout that sequence. Anyway, it's really good. You should get the soundtrack. It's so fucking good. I could just give it to you. But yeah, it's
on YouTube, Jonathan.
Yeah, well, I could give you the MP3s. I've got it. Anyway, but it's good stuff. And there are so many good musical moments, though, like when they do the flash forward and there's the orchestral version of Chala Head Chala. Oh, that's so good.
Oh, my God. Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, we'll get more into it when we talk about like the plot and stuff.
That's so good. The scene where Bardock and... what's his mother's name now? It's
Gina.
Gine, yeah. When Gine and Bardock send Goku off as a kid, the music in that scene is so good. Like I got teary in the theater at that because it's such a powerful moment. There's so many good musical moments in this film. The one that closes the movie when Goku is talking to Broly and it ends with him like instant transmissioning away. That's just a great piece of music. It's so good and I want to stand up and applaud Sumitomo because like if there was one way Battle of Gods and Resurrection F were seriously lacking compared to the old Dragon Ball movies, it was the music. Because the old Dragon Ball movies have phenomenal music. Now a new Dragon Ball movie has phenomenal music, and I'm so happy.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, when we rewatched those Broly movies, the music was probably the best part of those.
It's easily the best part of those movies. Movie 8 has, like, all that music is really important in the series for the rest of its run. Like, it's really important music. But yeah. All right, let's talk about the story. And it's actually pretty clear which parts to talk about, because we've got the prologue, the middle section, and the fight. Let's start with the prologue, which might be my favorite part of the movie. It's so good. Mm-hmm. I kind of just want a movie of this at some point, because it's really, like, it's bold to just say, we're going to start the movie with 30 minutes in the past. This isn't a prologue. This isn't, like, 5 minutes and then titles. It's 30 minutes, and then we're going to go to the future, and it is just act one of the movie. It's like Superman the movie, 1978. Like, this is an act of the film, and it is so fucking good. And I was actually, if there was any part of the movie I was worried about going in, it was this part, because part of this section is based on a chapter that was a bonus chapter in Jacko the Galactic Patrolman called Dragon Ball Minus, which I think is one of the worst things Toriyama has ever written and drawn. It's like 11 pages. It's really rushed. It's like a kind of bafflingly bad take on Bardock and everything, where it's just like, it's almost like you took that line from like the dub back in the day where I think Raditz told Goku their father was a great scientist and like made that into a chapter, and it's like kind of like just, it's like kind of weirdly soulless. It just doesn't feel good. And without radically altering the story of that chapter, this movie and this prologue, and I think the way it's contextualized by all the different father characters here, it's really well done. It completely kind of changes our understanding of the Saiyan race. It fleshes it out so beautifully. It changes our understanding of Frieza. It's really, really good. Yeah.
Like, it's the most, like, coherent and competent piece of world building I think I've ever seen from the Dragon Ball franchise. It's just, like, because we've talked about this a lot, of, like, Dragon Ball is one of the things that's really fun about Dragon Ball. I think that's something that trips some people up about it, is that when Toriyama was running Dragon Ball and just writing the manga, and obviously the anime was based on his stuff, he was like full speed ahead. Like, when I am done with something, I am done with it. So it's like, once I've had played my joke with Lunch, that character is just fucking gone. And the anime will have a nice little scene where she has followed Tenshinhan, and then she will disappear from the anime. The manga, she doesn't even get that. She just fucking disappeared in the ether between the Piccolo tournament and when Goku shows up and all the Raditz shit starts happening. You know, once fucking Gohan turns into a giant ape in that Vegeta fight, ape shit never happens. It just, nobody talks about it. It's never referenced. It's like nobody's tails grow back. Like, I don't know, with Trunks and Goten, who knows? Like, it's stuff like that of where once Toriyama was done with something, he moved on from it. And and if something changed, whatever. Like, if it was like, if it's inconvenient for me to have the moon be destroyed at this part of the series, I will say that at some point, God just put the moon back. Fine, we won't deal with it. Like, there, it's done. Like, somebody wished the moon back. I don't know. Like, how many wishes do you get from the Earth's Dragon Balls? Nobody knows. This movie doesn't know. Nobody knows.
Yeah.
Right? So it's one of the things, and it's like, I don't dislike that about Dragon Ball. It's one of the things I really like about Dragon Ball. But something that I think it's one of the things that has always held back the non-canonical or like extra canonical material in Dragon Ball is that it is really hard to do that kind of stuff when it's based on a work made by a madman who doesn't give a shit about his own continuity and canon, right?
Yes.
So it's like, it's one of the things that makes a lot of the movies and like the weird extra stuff really difficult, and like I think it's one of the things that like GT was always just kind of in a weird space with, and it's one of the things that makes Super work is that Super kind of has a similar attitude and it's just like, fuck it, we're just moving forward, you know, we don't give a shit about the giant ape stuff, which is something that, you know, GT always went back to. But the thing that this movie does is it says, well, let's actually take the time and care if we're going to do backstory, and which like necessitates you to do like be concerned with the canon and continuity and all that kind of stuff. Like, if you're going to do backstory, you have to care about that shit because it's literally what the story is. Let's take the time and attention to actually do it right, and that's what this movie does. And so every single little detail of, you know, just a tiny, tiny little thing like King Cold was the one who subjugated the Saiyans, and he's been the one who's been ruling over the Saiyans for however long, and then passes it on to Frieza, is such a more like cogent and coherent explanation of like the Frieza stuff and the existence of King Cold himself, which has always been a bizarre part of Dragon Ball, when King Cold just shows up and gets smoked by Trunks without even a fight, you know? Like little tiny details like that, details of like, this is how the Scouters come to be. But for me, the most important thing this movie does, that is something that like so much sci-fi fantasy stuff never understands, is that you just can't have an entire species be defined by one thing and one thing only. And for the longest time, the Saiyans were entirely defined by, we are like crazy fighting people, and that's it. And since that was basically vaguely how the Saiyans were set up in Dragon Ball Z whenever Raditz and Vegeta talked about it, you know, but they were all dead, and so the only examples of the Saiyans we had were Goku, Raditz, Nappa, and Vegeta, and that was the only canon Saiyans that like were proper full-blooded Saiyans. And since Nappa, Vegeta, and Raditz are all assholes, and Goku's not an asshole, 3/4 of the Saiyans are assholes, and that just meant all the Saiyans are assholes. And so every bit of extra canonical material, like whether it's the Bardock special or what have you, or the Broly movie with Paragus and stuff, every look you got at the Saiyans, or in like GT and stuff, GT is also very guilty of this, everything just went with that tack and just said, the Saiyans were massive assholes and they just went around and killed shit, and that's the only thing they were. And this movie makes the smart decision of saying, literally no species can be that. Right? Like, we're human beings. Think of all the different kinds of cultures that exist among humans. There has never been and will never exist a culture among human beings that is defined by one trait. I don't care how much the Vikings love to fight. The Vikings didn't only fight. The Vikings composed poetry. They made music. They built ships. They built houses. They had art and architecture and culture. And yes, they went around and raided and killed people too, and that was a big part of their culture. That's not the only thing they did. It's one of my big pet peeves and stuff like Star Trek, where you just end up with these species that are defined by one thing. This movie, even if you only get this brief glimpse into things, you see here's a Saiyan that cooks and, like, sells food. Here's a Saiyan that's, like, I love there's, like, some weird, like, Grand Vizier fucker with King Vegeta that's just this little tiny Saiyan in the back with, like, this staff that's just standing in the background of all those shots that has some sort of duties around the palace. And here's you have a couple of characters like that guy who's with Bardock and then the guy that Paragus kind of pseudo-kidnaps to take the ship.
His name is
They're,
Beats.
like,
it's a great name. It's
Yes.
Beats.
Yeah, Beats. So it's like you have engineers and technicians. It's like there are Saiyans that aren't fighters. And then there's also, you get a sense of, like, King Vegeta has, like, a whole caste system thing, and there's him and all the Saiyans that live in the palace, and you actually get the sense of, like, oh, here's why Vegeta, Prince Vegeta, the Vegeta that we know, is so hung up on the, like, royalty, lower-class Saiyan thing, because you get a much better sense of, oh, here's where all the normal Saiyans live, and, like, Bardock is some cool, like, leader of the community or something among these, like, normal Saiyans that live out here, but it's such a different world between them and the people, the Saiyans that live in the palace. And it's just a full look at what this species is and a much better look at what their culture is. And that's one of the things I find just so effective. It is true about every single detail they present in this prequel stuff, is that they really cared about what are the implications of this, what is stuff that we've said in past Dragon Ball stuff that we can use to inform this, but how can we really flesh out this world in its own right? And that's what this movie does, and I love it to death.
I agree so much. If you had not said all that, I would have said all that. Because that... So, like, for instance, if you compare this to Dragon Ball Minus was a big step in saying, like Toriyama had kind of always just... He liked the Bardock special a lot. Because the Bardock special is great.
Yes.
And he had kind of just accepted it into the canon. Like, he has little references to it in the manga. He did not create Bardock. Bardock was not in the manga first. He was in the anime first. And so we had always kind of thought, oh, okay, Toriyama likes that. And then in the manga, in Dragon Ball Minus, he does this weird thing where suddenly Bardock in that chapter acts, like, very saintly, and he's kind of, like, a little too heroic almost. And I think he's modulated that in this movie in a really interesting way, where, like, Bardock is a Saiyan. He's identifiably a Saiyan in that he fights and he's tough and he's buff and all those things, but he also, like, is conflicted about what he does. He fights because it's kind of like it's a job. Like, that's what he was conscripted into. It's what he does for work. He's not sure how he feels about it. He's very conflicted about Frieza. He does genuinely love his family. He's, conflicted about what to do about his family. He doesn't send Goku off to go save anyone. It's not exactly the story of Superman or Moses. It's more like, I think there's more to our people than I'm seeing right now, and I'm going to send him off. And this is what I mean when I've said on Twitter, and I think earlier in this podcast, that I think this movie is not hiding, but it has thematic subtext to it that goes deeper than Dragon Ball tends to go, which is that, the prologue is about four fathers, King Cold, Vegeta, Paragus, and Bardock, and the rest of the movie is about four sons, Frieza, Goku, Vegeta, and Broly. And all of those characters have a relationship with one another, And so Bardock sending Goku off in the hope that there is no more to our species than this creates Goku, who is like the ultimate anti-Saiyan in a lot of ways, even though he is also the embodiment of their love to fight. But he makes the Saiyans into something new. And King Vegeta, in having this strict caste system, creates something in his son that is the worst of what the Saiyans are in a lot of ways, right? And because little Vegeta is like the last remaining Saiyan at the end, that's why the Saiyans that we came to know are the bad guys. Like, there's this interesting implication that this movie turns Raditz and Vegeta into unreliable narrators in the original series.
Yes.
And I love that. I love that now what's amazing is that this prologue contradicts nothing in the original manga. It contradicts things in, like, the extra canon material, because of course it does. But if you go back to the original manga, it totally fits that Raditz is bullshitting with Goku and just saying, like, you were sent here to kill all the humans. Well, no, he wasn't, but I mean, A, maybe Raditz really thought that, or B, Raditz is an asshole. He's an unreliable narrator. Vegeta is an unreliable narrator. I love that about it, that you go back to the actual species, and these last surviving members were unreliable narrators of this. And, you have Paragus, who seems neither like a bad or good Saiyan, but is turned into, like, the worst of the worst because of the abuse he suffers, and he passes that down onto Broly, who also, like, is kind of like the id of the Saiyans unleashed. And so this prologue is not just exposition and world building. It is that, and it does that beautifully, and I agree with everything you said. It's also setting up all these really interesting thematic things that, frankly, took me 2 viewings to start to untangle all of this, in that the fight itself at the end of this movie is an extension of the themes set up in the prologue. And I think all of that it's frankly more like literarily ambitious than Dragon Ball tends to get, and it's awesome.
Yeah, it's one of the things that, like, you know, like, this story needs to be a movie. You know, like, it would be, I guess, like, you could do something sort of equivalent if it was a mini-series of, like, OVAs or something. But structurally, it needs to be a film. It doesn't feel like a lot of, you know, the older Dragon Ball movies that were just like, this feels like 4 episodes of the TV show that you, like, kind of put together or whatever. Like, more, but like 3, given the running time, 2 or 3. This feels like a really deliberate choice to structure it in these, like, very clear 3 acts that inform and build on one another. And you're 100% right. It goes for something more thematically sort of cogent and deep than what Dragon Ball normally is trying to go for. Usually with Dragon Ball, like, there's some of that stuff that's, like, baked into the background, because I think there's, like, it's a really vibrant story with really vibrant characters, so some of that stuff is always going to be there no matter what, if you're, like, playing with such sort of, like, potent material. But this movie is way more deliberate about how it goes about telling its story. And yeah, that prologue section, for all the reasons we both laid out, of the world building and also, like, the thematic, like, place setting that it does, it's like, it might like you said earlier, it might be my favorite part of the movie. It's like, it's, you know, it's just like, think of, like, you know, the fight is fucking amazing, and I love the fight, and I'll probably watch the fight a bunch, and I'm sure, like, the next fucking 10 years of my life is going to be this, like, a repeated pattern of, like, every 5 months I'll, like, watch a minute clip of that fight on YouTube as it, like, floats up and recommends, because I just am constantly watching clips of Dragon Ball stuff that I like. But it's this opening section of the movie that, like, really took me off guard, that set my expectations appropriately for the rest of the movie. This is different. Like, it's not doing the same thing that every other Dragon Ball media does, but the important thing that is, like, it's doing it in a way that is intelligent. And it doesn't, like you said, it doesn't contradict anything fundamental about Dragon Ball or anything literal about the canon of the manga, because one thing that's really nice is that I'm, like, in the middle of the Frieza stuff in my manga reread through, and so it, like, was really good timing for me to be right here, right when I was watching the movie, because all of that stuff of, like, Raditz and Vegeta talking about the Saiyans and now all the stuff with, like, Frieza is really fresh for me. And so all the character stuff they do with the Saiyans and the character stuff especially they do with Frieza feels really powerful to me, and it's something that's, like, on another level than what Dragon Ball, particularly, like, this sort of, like, post Toriyama, like, not true post Toriyama, but post, like, Toriyama fully controlling the series era of Dragon Ball has ever done.
Yes, and I mean, it's also so well paced, because they could have, like, fast forwarded through a lot of this. I like that it is kind of a slow paced section of the movie, and it takes its time where it needs to. It goes faster where it needs to. Every moment counts in that prologue section. There's a lot of really good stuff. It's interesting that this is not necessarily a vastly different backstory for Broly, but it's adjusted enough, and they've taken out the stupid thing with Kakarot crying, that like, and I think because of how it's contextualized around all the other stuff, it just hits you so much harder. Paragus has so much stronger motivations going into this. Broly has so much stronger motivations. The way it characterizes the Saiyan race makes so much more sense. And then there's just some really good scenes, like when Frieza decides to blow up the planet. I still, ultimately, the one in the Bardock special might be my favorite, just because it's where Frieza goes, Zaban-san, the Doria-san, look at the pretty fireworks, oh, and it's his best evil laugh ever, and they don't do that here, which is too bad. But it's still a really great moment, and the way you just feel the destruction of the planet and of Bardock's last stand, just raging against the death of his people, it's really great stuff.
Yeah. One other thing before we move on from this section that I love and want to point out is, this is something that the movie does across the board, is it writes its characters really intelligently. And that's both of that, like, it's smart about how it uses its characters, but also the characters in the movie that are smart.
Yep.
And I love King Vegeta and Bardock are both smart. They're not idiots. So it's like, I love that, because King Vegeta obviously has, like, he has 2 justifications but both of them are legitimate from his perspective of why he's like trying to get rid of Broly. One is that Broly is like, you know, upstepping his own son, but the other one, and like the explanation he gives to Paragus that at first Paragus understands, I think the audience is probably led to understand is like supposed to be bullshit, is that Broly is a freak of nature. He is not going to be able to control his power. We're not going to be able to control him, so let's get rid of him before it becomes a problem, which is basically just what Frieza is doing himself with the Saiyans. And like that explanation is something that feels like, okay, King Vegeta is like feels like a character in this movie in a way that King Vegeta has never felt like a character in Dragon Ball stuff, because he's only ever appeared generally in flashbacks in like the anime, and it's only ever just been like, oh, here's like Vegeta with a goatee. This just feels like this is a guy who's legitimately been, like, is a king and has been ruling over these people. And he seems brutal and ruthless, yes, but also he's not an idiot. It's like, I do think that he legitimately had both of those reasons for getting rid of Broly, and he was not just bullshitting when he gave that second one. And I also love that Bardock puts together what is happening to the Saiyans in Frieza through logic. He didn't go fight a weird fish dude on a planet really far away and get magic telepathy powers, which has always been by far the weakest part of the Bardock special. Is just like he just gets magic powers because this thing is like 40 minutes long and we don't have enough time to do this. So,
well, because they're also characterizing him in that as a dumb Saiyan. Like all Saiyans in like the original extra continuity stuff are a base level of stupid, right?
Yeah, they're all morons, and so it's like, here, you need to be able to see the fucking future to figure this shit out. Here, it's like, you know, a lot of the Saiyans don't seem to have a great idea of what's going on. But, like, not because they're stupid, but because it's like, I think it would be legitimately hard to even fathom, oh yeah, that dude's gonna blow up our entire planet. In the same way that, like, you know, Hitler or Donald Trump became to power, it's the same kind of shit. So it's like, I don't blame the Saiyans for not thinking about this shit. But Bardock being able to look at everything that's happening and him having this sense of like, this is a really battle-hardened guy who has seen a lot of stuff, and he's not a moron, and so he can put two and two together. He's probably done this fucking trick to try to assemble a bunch of people into one spot so he can blow them all up, because this is a guy who goes around and takes over planets. And so like that sense of, this is a guy who has had experiences and is able to see what is going on around the margins and put two and two together and kind of follow his hunch to save Goku. It's just a thing that is true across this entire movie. It has such a smart sense of its characters and how to use them and how to make them feel alive and have them act according to the way that you think those characters would actually act according to their experiences and who they are.
Absolutely. All good stuff. Okay, so we flash forward into the present day. And now we have, again, we're into the next generation of characters. If we had the fathers, now we have the sons. So we have Goku and Vegeta are fighting on the island that Bulma has, you know, built out for them because she's very rich. I like how Super has really started to, like, flaunt Bulma's wealth. It's good. It's a good look. Like, because she is that fucking rich. They invented fucking capsules. That's amazing. She would totally have that kind of money and just build a fucking island. Why not? So her husband and her best friend can just beat each other up. It's great.
Yes. And that transition from the past to the present timeline, all while it's playing this cool version of Chala Head Shala, is just amazing. I was bouncing in my seat basically once that started happening, and it's like, because it transitions from seeing Goku and Vegeta fighting in like the montage to them fighting in the present day Dragon Ball Super timeline, and it was a thing of like, wait, are they fucking playing? Oh my god, they're playing Chala Head Shala as that like montage is happening.
Yeah,
and that's also the first taste you get of like the fight choreography and animation style for this movie. It's just like, fucking A, this is gonna kick ass.
Yep. And this is where we get all the stuff with Goku, Vegeta, Bulma. We've got Beerus and Whis there, and we've also got Frieza is off doing his evil schemes. And that's basically our cast for this movie, along with Broly and Paragus and some of the new characters. And, you know, I think you and I would both agree Goku and Vegeta are not the main characters in this movie.
No, definitely.
Yeah, and in fact, they're in it somewhat infrequently, certainly through this act. But there is, like, I love this stretch because it is fucking funny. And it is not just funny, it's Toriyama funny. It is so pure, uncut Toriyama comedy in, like, the specific way they, like, have Goku and Vegeta fighting over Frieza being resurrected. And in the absolutely perfect joke of Bulma wanting the Dragon Ball so she can be 5 years younger, and Frieza wanting the Dragon Ball so he can be 5 centimeters taller. That is the most Toriyama joke Toriyama has ever written.
Yes, it's amazing. Like, in the way that they play those two jokes of, like, you know, cutting from the Bulma one to the Frieza one, and then, like, you as the viewer, the slow realization of, oh, they're doing the same joke again.
There's a cut I love in the movie between they zoom in on, like, Bulma's, like, mouth and lips, and it just hard cuts to Frieza's mouth and lips. And his, like, weird lipstick thing.
Yeah, it's like a weird match cut matching Bulma and Frieza, two characters you would not expect a match cut between. And so it's like, yeah, when they first do it, it's just like, what the fuck was that cut? And then, like, as the joke is developing, like, oh my god. But it leads to one of the things that I love so much about this movie is its usage of Frieza.
Yes, I wanted to talk about this.
So great, because it's the kind of thing that I can see some people... I could understand some Dragon Ball fans not loving that Frieza's just doing this, like, using the Dragon Balls for a very petty reason. But
Frieza's a petty bitch! That's what he is.
Yeah, Frieza's a petty bitch, but it's such a perfect encapsulation of how much he has developed as a character since they brought him back, and why it was such a smart move, and, like, the critical move that Resurrection F made of bringing Frieza back into play. Not just, like, he's alive again, but he's, like, relevant in terms of, like, the power levels and stuff. Is that there's so much untapped... There was so much untapped material with Frieza that it just was kind of a waste to have that character just be dead forever. And so bringing him back with this, it's like... Fucking A, he's just funny and has such a strong presence in the movie and is threatening when he needs to be threatening and menacing when he needs to be menacing. But also there's, like, a legitimate good chunk of character development in that sense of, right, the Frieza that we knew from the Namek saga, the Frieza that's dead, who got blown up by Goku, came back as a robot, and then got blown up by Trunks. That Frieza was... Like, one of the things that was really interesting about that version of Frieza was that he had this, like, core insecurity to his character. Of that he was the most powerful guy around, but he always carried this fear. And it was, like, the fear of the Saiyans and the Super Saiyan rising up. And it's what, at the beginning of this movie, leads to him destroying the Saiyans. And you get that. That's one of the things that's valuable about having that flashback, is revisiting where Frieza started as a character. But now you revisit, and so that part of that insecurity is also why he wanted the Dragon Balls to wish for immortality, because that's like, I don't care how many Super Saiyans come around, if I'm immortal, I'm good. And that was part of his whole deal. So he was insecure about anybody ever being able to match up to him, because he'd never seen anybody as powerful as he was. And so now that he's been beaten multiple times, basically, he's sort of... Humbled is not quite the right word, but it's like 50% of humbled or something.
It's what humbled is to Frieza.
Yeah, exactly. It's what humbled is to Frieza, that Frieza is no longer afraid of failure, which is the thing that was always holding him back before, because he has already failed. And so it would be really disappointing to me if he had just been like, yeah, okay, let's go get the Dragon Balls. Time to, like, now that I'm back in play again, I'm back in the universe, it's time to go back to the thing I was doing on Namek. I want to get the Dragon Balls and be immortal. Him just saying this, like, no, like, I don't want to be immortal. I know from my experience in Hell, and I always love whenever you can flash back to Frieza hanging from a tree in Hell in this, like, beautiful paradise. It's great that you can get more shots of that. But he knows from Hell all the ways that eternal life can go wrong. But he also has, I think, this appreciation of like, the game of fighting, and of, like, his competition with the Saiyans. There's something that, like, he feels alive in this way, that it's like he's passionate about things in a way that Frieza in the Namek arc is just so, like, whatever. Like, yeah, I want the Dragon Balls, and I'll be very annoyed if anybody gets in my way about it. But Frieza just is, like, spends that whole fucking arc sitting in his chair. This Frieza is, like, bouncing around and being like, I'm alive, I'm having fun, I'm super powerful. This is fucking great. And that sense of character development for Frieza is such a joy for me to see. And it's something that I love that they've made. They have not wasted that choice they made of bringing the character back, and have made such good use of it.
No, I mean, they've fully, at this point, ingrained Frieza as just part of the main cast, and they've done it so much better than I ever thought was possible, because he deserves to be part of the main cast. He's just that good a character. And
yeah.
I should just say, we'll talk about the dub in full later. Chris Ayres, he's so good as Frieza. Like, you can never top Ryusei Nikao, but it is the greatest joy of watching Dragon Ball dubs these days, is that is about as good a match for a Japanese voice as I've ever heard in a dub. Chris Ayres Frieza is perfect.
Yeah, it was by far the most crucial recast they did for Dragon Ball Kai,
yes.
was getting that new Frieza in. And yeah, that was like, when I watched through Dragon Ball Kai, back when it was just the Frieza and Cell stuff in English with like the English dub. That was like the main thing that made it worthwhile to me, was getting to that and being like, holy shit, there's an English Frieza that kicks ass, and that's awesome.
But what I was going to say is that I think Frieza as the antagonist of this movie, because that is what he is. He's the ultimate antagonist, really.
Yeah.
Is a more compelling antagonist than the Frieza of Resurrection F. Like, Resurrection F is we like that movie. It's not the best Dragon Ball movie, but it's very solid, and it's got some great moments, and it uses Frieza well. I think it's the least interesting use of Frieza in this era of the show, because what they did with him on Super and what they do with him in this movie is so much more compelling than just... Because Resurrection F is just, I'm alive, and I'm going to try to settle this old score. In the Super material, in the Universe Survival arc, and now this... That's part of his motivation, but there's so much more to it. And I love that we finally get a version of Frieza who is just the puppet master. He does not... I guess he fights Broly in this movie in a extraordinarily funny montage. But other than that, like, he's not out there putting his, like, fists on the line. He is from behind just like... Well, this is hilarious. I got some really strong science here, and I'm on my way to Earth. I'm a fuck with Goku and Vegeta because I can. And that is such an amazing use of Frieza. Like, Frieza is used better here than at almost any other point in the series. And I think because he's not the guy doing the fighting, it allows you to see a lot more sides of him. You know?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And Chris Ayres is great. He's so good, and I cannot wait to see this in Japanese so I can hear Ryu Senekau. Because I'm sure, I mean, he's always great, but yeah, I always want to do a tip of the hat to Chris Ayres as Frieza, because it's the best voice in the Dragon Ball dub at this point, and it's such a perfect match for that character. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, all the use of Frieza in this is great. But this section of the movie is essentially Broly's. So I think this is the time, Sean. Why is Broly in Dragon Ball Super Broly a great character, where Broly in Dragon Ball Z movies 8, 10, and 11 is a piece of shit character?
Yeah, well, so let's tackle old Broly first, and like cover that base. Like we don't have to go too deep into it because we did a whole podcast on those movies. But yeah, old Broly was just like, hey, I'm little skinny lanky Broly. What's up? Kakarot! And that's the character.
Yes.
That's the character of the first movie. His character in the second movie is Kakarot! And his character in the third movie is just a Swamp Thing. And
he's big, he's evil, he punches, he's mindless. In his most famous line was, I'm not a demon, I'm the devil. And then the only reason I really like that line is because I like when it plays when you pick him in Dragon Ball. And Bin Shimada did a really good job with the role.
Yes.
Part of why Broly is famous is Bin Shimada is really good at yelling, and his yells are very good.
Yes, that's for sure. So yeah, you give some props to that, but he was like it is that thing where if you look up the phrase one-dimensional in the dictionary, it legitimately should just be a picture of that version of Broly, because he is, like, if that version of Broly was a more sweeping cultural reference point I could use, I literally would use it in a class on Tuesday where I'm talking about rounded flat characters. Like, I don't think a lot of 16-year-olds know what old Broly is. But that is literally the best example I could think of for a flat character.
It really is, and here's the thing: you could do a great exercise. Show the old Broly movie. Show this Broly movie. Flat character, round character, right?
Exactly. Yes, because this Broly is such a good character, Jonathan. Like because all the other stuff we've talked about so far, the animation, the music, and the stuff they do with the flashback, the writing, like all that stuff is great for all those characters and everything. But if this character of Broly didn't work, this movie would only ever be able to be as good as like a Resurrection F.
Yes.
Like it would be like the fight was awesome, it looked cool, it had some good shit in it, but like so many Dragon Ball movies, the core story is whatever. But they put so much love and care into this version of Broly, and I love him so much. He's my big boy. I just want to give him a big hug because he has like so much character to him, and like his like the main thing he is. And it's something that is such a smart extension of the Broly from the old movie, but they never just like had any interest in the interiority of that version of the character. But Broly is a victim of abuse from his father. Like that's what he is. And in this movie, like that's so much of his characterization is that obviously he already gets super powerful when he's angry. But I think one of the main reasons why he is able to get as angry as he is because he's suffered abuse at the hands of his father for so long, because his dad is obsessed with this idea of getting revenge King Vegeta and on the Saiyans, and so he has trained Broly in a way that you would train a dog to be powerful and to fight, and he has the fucking shock collar around him, which like was something that I wasn't expecting to be an element they brought back from the old character, but like they bring it back in kind of like, and almost in a way that like to like deliberately shame those old movies of like, this is what you do with this kind of material thematically is it's not just like a, you know, he's just a puppy dog and then he's angry. It's you have to focus a little bit on the interior. It's like your responsibility to focus on the interiority of a character like that, both because of the nature of the subject matter and how important it is, but also just like how important it is in the world and how important it is for this story and how interesting a material it can be for this character. And so then you following that little bit of like Broly as a kid, as a baby, and getting the hints of his power when they land on the planet from Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, where like to the point where like I really was hoping that when the two new characters show up on that planet, that Paragus would just like break out a fucking earworm or whatever, because it's so much the planet from Wrath of Khan.
You know, I think one of the weak links in this dub is the guy who voices Paragus. I don't think he's that good. They should have had Ricardo Montalban do. Oh, he's dead. But if Ricardo Montalban was alive, that would have been so great.
Yes, that would have been amazing. But yes, so you have this like whole like kind of Wrath of Khan situation where they've been stranded on this planet. Like one key choice they make is that they make Paragus have the most dead simple plan possible. I just want revenge on Vegeta, and the only thing that even makes anything about his like I want revenge on Vegeta possible is Frieza entering the scene. There's no I'm going to create a new planet Vegeta and lure Vegeta to it, and there's going to be a meteor that comes to destroy that planet Vegeta, and I'm going to have legendary Super Saiyan Broly go around and do other shit because he's completely inconsequential to my plan to get revenge on Vegeta. And it's like none of that shit. There's none of that. It's just I'm a crazy evil dad with a mustache and only one eye, and I've abused my son to hell and high water over the course of like 40 years on this hell fucking planet. And I just want revenge on Vegeta, and I will take the easiest debate, even if it is just Frieza fucking like showing up, you know, with like literally with like a carrot on a stick for me. I do not care. I will just take any chance I get. Like that's such a more rational characterization for Paragus, and so like his side of the movie works so much. That's probably the single biggest improvement over the first Broly is just that. But then Broly himself in his relationship with his father, and then in particular his relationship with the two new characters whose names I will never be able to retain, Chilai and Limo.
Even though they are great characters, let's be clear.
They're great characters. I think it'll be easier for me once I hear the Japanese cast, because they're such Japanese names that it's like hard for it to stick for me when I've only heard the English dub say it. But yeah, like once they enter the picture and Broly has like these new friends, particularly with Chilai, and he just has this handful of scenes where he's talking, and particularly the scene where he talks about how he has his little like fur coat thing around his waist, and he had his whole friend Ba, who's this big weasel monster on the planet, which, by the way, the spider monsters and the giant weasel creatures that just like have giant necks that come up out of the ground, fucking awesome. Such a great Dragon Ball weird alien planet to be on. Like that's like a planet that Jacko would go visit. It's just fucking awesome. But like, yeah, his whole backstory of that he had his one friend, which was Ba, the giant weasel monster, and then his dad shot its ear off because he didn't want Broly to have any friends, even if it was a giant weasel monster. And so Broly took the ear and like made a little blanket thing that he wraps around his waist with it. That is like I was fucking tearing up at Broly, at fucking Broly. Like I was having an emotional moment in that movie theater. See, just like, bro, oh my god, dude, Broly, man, like that's where it's like, I just want to give you a hug, man. Like it's going to be okay. You're with friends now. These two guys seem awesome. Like your dad's an asshole, but you're not. Like you can be more than this. Like get away from this stuff.
It is
like it's so good.
It is such a good moment. I too teared up at that, and it was. I have had many reactions to Dragon Ball over the years. Like getting that emotional is usually not one of them. Like that kind of emotional. It's an amazing moment. It's a very like Toriyama moment too, in that in tying this character to such a simple, relatable thing like that, you know. And I think and tying it to his character design, which I want to talk about, and that he wears Ba's ear. I mean, oh my god, it's a good scene, and it colors everything after it so beautifully. Because I agree, it's like, I want to give you a hug, man. I want you to know it's going to be okay. That poor kid. So I agree with everything you just said about how Broly is written. But I want to say the other piece of this is it is infinitely a better character design. Like, Broly in this movie, at the very end when he goes like full Broly Super Saiyan, it's fairly similar to his design from the original movies. It's been tweaked, but it's fairly similar. Up to that point, though, all of the base Broly, the green Super Broly, all that stuff, it's a different character. Like, it looks vaguely similar to original Broly, but it is, in essence, and I think this is true in the writing as well, this is not the same character who was there in the 90s, right? And the way Toriyama has drawn him, where he's, like, this character literally wears his interiority on his, not on his sleeves, because he doesn't wear sleeves, but on his, like, waist with Ba's ear, and, like, I think the specific, like, tone of skin they have for him, where he's very tanned, he looks so much more like a Toriyama creation. There is so much life and soul in his visual design, and when he starts fighting, again, they don't just have him, like roid out and become the Hulk. He just kind of changes his stance and his visage and all these things, and it is such a cool way he fights and everything. It cannot be overstated how important having a proper Toriyama Broly character design is to this movie, because I feel like it's 50% writing, 50% animation, and they're both really important.
Yeah, and it's like he loses all like the weird like color stuff that like the coloring of Broly has always been like of his clothing of the old design has always been something that's never really connected for me, and it's always been like what like it so clearly just was not a Toriyama aesthetic, and he was gaudy looking, you know, like quite literally he had like all the jewelry and the weird bracelets and all that shit. And here his look is so simple, and he has like very plain, you know, once he gets the armor on, he has very plain sand armor. He has longish hair that kind of comes down over his face a little bit. He's like his expressions play so clearly across his face, which that's like one of the main benefits of this animation style also, and like of just having like the budget of the movie and the time is being able to animate the emotions on everybody's faces so clearly. But for Broly in particular, who's like a character that just expresses everything he's kind of feeling in the moment, which a lot of the time is he's very angry, but when he's not, like he's kind of like depressed and sad, and everything about his character communicates that to you visually. So yeah, like these characters, I had like the character design didn't strike me as much as it would have if I hadn't been playing the fucking Dragon Ball Legends game, where I've had that character for like a month now, so I'm very used to it. But yes, it's everything about the way that character is put together visually is a million times improvement, and I'm very much looking forward to whether it's in the next season of DLC for Dragon Ball FighterZ, or if they like revamp the Broly character that already exists in Dragon Ball FighterZ for another version of the game or something. I'm very excited to see that version of that visual design of the character replace the one that is Dragon Ball FighterZ now, because I cannot go back.
Nope.
Like, I never really liked old Broly, but I really cannot go back to the way that old Broly looks.
Because now, like, you look at old Broly, and he always has this, like, evil grin on his face when he's doing mayhem. And one of the just, like, it's subtle, but it is such a key change, is the way Broly fights in this movie is not out of malice, it is out of a lack of control. And that may seem like a small distinction, but the way it plays in the movie, I watch this Broly fight, and I don't even think about the other Broly. Even when they quote the old movies, like there's a scene where he is, and this scene is so great for how it is one of the most visceral moments of Dragon Ball fighting I've ever seen, where he is like ragdolling Goku all around, and then he picks up Goku and just shoves his head in the ice and rams it across. That is a direct quote of something Broly does to Gohan in the first Broly movie, right? Yeah. I didn't even think about that, though, because this Broly is doing it for such a massively different reason. That Broly is doing it because he's a sadist, and he's like, I'm going to fuck this kid up. This Broly is doing it because he is acting like a literal ape, you know? Like, he is acting all this aggression out because he has no outlet for it, and he has no control, and he's just causing harm because it's instinct. And it is such a massively different characterization through the fighting, and I think that's really important to talk about, too. Like, one of my favorite little pieces of exposition in this whole movie is Paragus explaining that he thinks the source of Broly's power is that he has, like, internalized the power of the great ape, and that he's like, he has the power of a great ape in a Saiyan body, which is why he can't control himself. Good God, is that a better explanation for Broly's power than anything in the original movies?
Yeah, there's no fucking around with, like, the legendary Super Saiyan versus all these normal Super Saiyans we have, which is just something I've never bought. Like, it's never... Yeah, like I'm really glad that they don't fuck around with any of that dumb stuff. But yeah, like one of the things they do with his character here, I think is a key difference that you just pointed out, is that he's not evil. And it's like old Broly, even though like oftentimes I don't think of old Broly of like, oh yeah, he's like the evil guy. I think of him as like, oh yeah, he's the guy who he has so much power that he loses control. But when you watch the actual movies, he's just fucking, he just turns evil.
And he has control. That's where the Akuma line comes from.
Yeah. So that's like, I think one of the main things here, it's like, here's like the comparison. Old Broly is like a bad version of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. This Broly is a good version of the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, totally.
So it's like it's nothing he's doing is out of malice. Everything he's doing is because once he gets angry, once he lets loose, he can't rein himself in anymore. But he's never doing anything because he wants to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, let's talk about the fight, because I think, that we covered the second act pretty well, I think. And, Frieza comes to Earth and they have their stand. I mean, I do love the moment where Goku and Vegeta are just preparing, like, all right, he's coming. Like, and it's just like, at this point, they've seen Frieza so many times, it's like, this is just like, how are we going to deal with this motherfucker this time, But now Frieza's brought these two Saiyans and they're like, this is weird. But anyway, the fight starts, and this fight is so good, Sean. And before we even talk about the animation, I just want to make a quick comparison. When we talked about movie 8, Broly the Legendary Super Saiyan, what you pointed out, and I think you're right on the money, is that fight is so boring because all it is super overpowered Broly beating the shit out of everybody. Everybody else is a ragdoll. It's like that moment from Avengers where Hulk is like doing the thing to Loki. It's that for 30 minutes with none of the characterization. Everyone's acting out of character, and then at the very, very end, Goku gets some power and beats him. And it's boring as shit because there's no dynamism to it. This fight is, all right, we start with Vegeta's going to go first, and Broly comes at him, and Vegeta is very clearly just testing him. He's just testing the waters. Broly gets powerful. Vegeta powers up a little, beats him. Back and forth a little bit. Then Broly discovers a new thing of power. It's like, oh shit, and now Goku comes into the fight, and they have a back and forth, and Goku tests him for a little bit, but then it comes back, and Broly powers up again, and now Goku is on the defensive, and blah, 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 and then things go crazy, and now Goku and Vegeta have to fuse, and then Gogeta's in, and so, like, the power dynamics are constantly shifting. It is this... There's a lot of character work being done through the fight of how would Goku approach this? How would Vegeta approach this? Where is Broly at in the development of his, like, instinctual rage? And so the fight is exciting, not just because it is well animated and looks cool, but because it is scripted dynamically, because there's a lot of give and take in the fight. And even amongst the best Dragon Ball fights, this one understands that better than just about any of them.
Exactly, yeah, and it's something that it at a certain point it doesn't matter how cool looking the fight is if the narrative context around it is doesn't work for it. Because it's like, the animation for the Broly the Legendary Super Saiyan fight looks spectacular. There's some of those shots, like the shot of when Broly is dragging Gohan's head through the building and it's exploding, looks amazing. And I one of my personal favorite shots for that movie is when I think it's Broly grabs Trunks and just flies super far to the background of the shot and just slams into a building, and just this giant crater appears on the building. It's a lot of those shots are great, and it's you see the GIF on fucking Twitter or something. It's that looks awesome. But then when you watch the movie, it's the dullest thing in the world because it's just that over and over and over again. And there's no hope for the heroes to win. The hope that is pulled out is almost literally a Deus Ex Machina at some point, depending on how you look at spirituality and ki or whatever. So it's just very dull. Here, there's a couple of key things they do. One key thing is the movie is about Broly. Broly is basically the protagonist of the film. You start with his development at the beginning. When you revisit him, it's so much about his journey from being this guy who has been abused and cannot control himself to becoming someone who has stepped into this new world and this new phase of his life, and he has friends and maybe can become friends with Goku also. And it's the thing at the end of the movie. And one of the things that then really works is that Broly as our protagonist he's the one fighting the uphill battle.
Yep.
So it's the mirror image of what Broly's role was in the past movies, where he was the antagonist that was always winning, always winning. Here we have Goku and Vegeta, who are not antagonists and not really protagonists. They're supporting characters in this movie is kind of how I'd classify them. But they are far more powerful than Broly, both just in terms of their power level, but also in terms of their experience, their life experience as fighters and as people and Saiyans, they're just far more mature people than Broly is, than Broly are. Broly is, however the fuck you pluralize that. And so Broly having to fight this uphill battle and like diving deeper and deeper in the depths of his abilities is a lot more dynamic and compelling than just watching these characters that we already know, Goku, Gohan, Trunks, Vegeta, Piccolo, in the old Broly movie, go up against an opponent that is just more powerful for them than them because he's the legendary Super Saiyan. Here we have our protagonist going up against characters that we know, and we know their power level, and so the whole time you're sitting there, the audience is sitting there knowing like at any point Vegeta or Goku could go Super Saiyan Blue, and this fight would be over. And they're not doing it because they're testing the waters with Broly, because they know that Broly's not evil. They don't just want to kill him. At one point, Vegeta like maybe is trying to kill Broly because he thinks there's no hope for this guy is completely out of control. He's gone rabid. I have to put him down. But there's no sense of like we're just like this incredibly powerful force that nobody knows, nobody understands, like Broly, legendary Super Saiyan, and we're just going to have you fight him for 30 minutes, and then the fight is over for whatever.
I think the most narratively radical thing this movie does is that the ultimate climax, Gogeta versus Broly, you're not rooting for Goku. You are in fact scared of Goku's power because you are aligned with Chi-Lai and Limo, who are scared because Broly's going to get himself killed. And it's kind of nebulous who's the most powerful here, but clearly Goku and Vegeta are the most experienced. They can at the very least outthink Broly, and they have the upper hand in that fight, and you are scared for Broly because you don't want Goku and Vegeta to kill him. That's where like POV is really important here, and your point of view is with Chi-Lai and Limo being like, fuck, that Goku guy, that Gogeta guy is really powerful, and Broly's just this kid. They don't know that about him. Like, this is fucked up. And so when Goku is getting that Kamehameha ready, it's not the same feeling that you usually get when Goku's getting a Kamehameha ready. It is, aw shit, I don't want him to evaporate Broly. That sucks. And that's never happened. Dragon Ball has never done that. And that is just a new thing Dragon Ball has done here. Kind of like when Battle of Gods ends with Goku just abjectly losing the fight. It's like, Dragon Ball's never done that. That's amazing. Dragon Ball had never done that here, and it is such a radical, interesting thing. And I agree, it's Broly's development through the fight that matters, and I think especially when you view it that way, it's so much more exciting.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that because it's really exciting for the Broly character, and because we've by that point we've kind of come up with the Broly character through the movie and come to really love him. But then also as a Dragon Ball fan, it continues to do something that is one of my favorite things about Dragon Ball Super, and particularly the Tournament of Power and some of the stuff with the Universe 6 Saiyans, is it gives you that different perspective on these characters we know already, Goku and Vegeta. And so it's like, coming into this movie, I was not expecting the movie to be so disinterested in the character arcs of Goku and Vegeta. Like, this movie just doesn't really care about that, which is fine because the movie is what it is. I was coming into it expecting it more to be from their POV than it to just be so from
That's
Broly's
something that threw me off the first time I saw it, I'll be honest.
Yeah. And so it's that thing, but that when I kind of like gave myself over to it, one of the things that's really exciting about that is that Vegeta and Goku become very threatening, and they feel like this is the most powerful either of those characters have ever felt to me, because you're going up against them. They're the wall you're trying to overcome. They're not the person you're rooting for. And you get a little bit of that in Dragon Ball Super when you have like Kabe or Kale and Caulifla that are these other Saiyans that are also like this kind of coming up in Goku and Vegeta, or sort of pseudo-tutoring them through fighting. This is a way more aggressive version than that was in Dragon Ball Super in those different scenes. But it's that same sense of like, these characters that we love so much have come so far, and you just feel the incredible gap in skill and ability and experience that Goku and Vegeta have accumulated. And it's one of the incredible benefits of this movie being able to, build off of the foundation of Dragon Ball, is that the audience has that pre-existing relationship. So the characters of Goku and Vegeta, you don't need to put all that work into them for the audience to like them. And so it gives you this space to have this just totally different perspective on those characters when you can adopt Broly's POV.
Yes. Let's talk about Goku and Vegeta's role in this for a little bit. I think Goku is very well used in this. I think it's the right amount of Goku. I think the writing on Goku is great. The animation's great. I have no complaints with Goku in this movie. Yeah. Vegeta, I'm still not entirely sure how I feel. I think he's underused, but slightly. Like, it's just, I wish there was an acknowledgement in the movie of Vegeta's character arc in Super, where like so much of his arc in Super is about kind of rediscovering his Saiyan pride and understanding it in a different way than he understood it before, and taking these people under his wing. And I feel like I wish that had come out more clearly in his confrontation with Broly, and that it doesn't felt a little jarring. At the same time, Vegeta is a hard character to use in the movies. There's a reason why Vegeta is not prominently in any of the movies, really, other than like he's in like Fusion Reborn, he's in Resurrection F, he's in this one, but he's never the main character, and that's because Vegeta is a character who takes time to develop. He is a still waters, run deep scenario where a 90-minute movie is just never going to be the case where you're going to use Vegeta best. Vegeta is best when you're watching him over weeks and months develop, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and so Vegeta is hard to use in a movie. So I think overall his position in this is probably the correct one, but I guess I just wish there was more of an acknowledgement of it. And it threw me off a little bit that there isn't, and I think you could read the moment where he goes to, like, fire the big beam at Broly as either that feels out of character for Vegeta in this moment, or kind of as you said it, it's like Vegeta is also kind of a pessimist and is just thinking, like, you know, there's nothing to be done here.
Yeah. Like, I do agree. I think there's two things I wish the movie had. I wish it had one moment with Vegeta, either early, like right when Paragus and Broly show up. I wish there was maybe a little moment with Vegeta there, or a moment with Vegeta later in the fight that does some of that. And I wish there was another emotional beat with Broly somewhere deeper into the fight. Like, those are the two beats that I wish the movie had that are, like, my only, like, real, like, substantive criticisms of the movie, that are things that I actually suspect that if there is an extended version, those things are probably in there, and were cut for time or something like that.
Because Goku gets that moment. Goku has a great scene where it's in the trailers, he's Super Saiyan God, he does this amazingly cool telekinetic thing where he, like, binds up Broly with his red aura energy. It looks so good. And it's the speech about how, you know, we've had a lot of enemies, but I don't think you're one of them. Vegeta needed that somewhere.
Yes, but Vegeta does have, like while it's not a lot, there he has that one line of when he is doing that, like he's turned Super Saiyan God. He's like basically be like, okay, I'm done with this fight. Like, I've done testing you, and it's clear that you're like fucking off your rocker, Broly. Like, I don't know what your deal is, dude, but you fucking lost it, like, already. It's like, that's the beginning of the fight, and Broly's like completely lost his shit, and it feels like Vegeta's kind of putting him down. Like you know, like old Yeller kind of putting him down. But he says this line, like, what a waste, as he's doing it, which obviously I just assume in Japanese is motanides. There's like this is like, which is, this is such a waste to, like, have to do this to you. And it's something that is like, it's a small thing, but when you take Vegeta throwing Nappa into the sky and blowing him up because Nappa wasn't good enough to beat Goku, and being like, ha ha ha, you fucking idiot, like, you suck, Nappa, I'm just gonna blow you because you're so useless to me now, and just being evil and an asshole about it. Going from that to, I hate that I have to do this to you, fellow Saiyan, because this is such a waste of what you are. Like, that to me, like, I wish there was a little bit more of it, but that to me there is that acknowledgement of it.
And I agree. I don't think Vegeta's out of character. I think he's arguably a little underused. Vegeta also he's never going to be the protagonist of one of these movies because it's just, I don't think he works in that mode.
Yeah, I mean, the only way it would be if, like, he, like, was so the protagonist of the movie to the expense of, like, all the other characters, which they're never going to.
No, in part because, like, Goku is tailor-made for movies, because you can do 90 minutes of Goku very easily.
Yes, yeah.
He's a very elastic character in that way. But yeah, so that's Goku and Vegeta. I should also say, Vegeta with the red Super Saiyan God hair, which we have not seen before, looks so fucking good. Like, the different multicolored hair looks good on Goku. It looks really good on Vegeta. Like, the red and blue hair on Vegeta, I think I like even more than the red and blue hair on Goku.
I agree. Yeah, it's so good. And just all the Super Saiyan effects and transformations in this movie, so amazing. Like, I think maybe my favorite one is just when Vegeta goes normal Super Saiyan in that fight. And
his hair turns green briefly? That's amazing.
And it's just the way that, like, it's flowing up. It's just like, I mean, the shots in, like, the first Dragon Ball Super Broly trailer of, like, that pan up of Super Saiyan Vegeta, but it looks so good. And it's also just, that's another amazing moment where Paragus sees that, it's like, what the fuck is that? And Frieza turns and is like, wait, are you telling me that Broly can't even go Super Saiyan? Man, that's really disappointing.
Yeah.
It's like what is that like perspective of 40 years ago during the prologue or whatever, this like, oh, the legend of the Super Saiyan. I don't even think it really exists. It must be some sort of myth to being like, oh yeah, he can go Super Saiyan. He can go Super Saiyan 2. That one over there can also go Super Saiyan 3. They can both go Super Saiyan God, which is red hair, and then they can go Super Saiyan God, Super Saiyan, but we just call it Super Saiyan Blue because that's blue hair. And then he can go Kaioken on top of that, and then the Vegeta one, he can go like super blue.
Oh, and also
it's a lot.
Also, they both have kids, and their kids can do it.
Yes, and yeah, it's a lot. Yeah. I'm kind of surprised you haven't done it yet, Broly.
Yeah, I mean, oh my god, Frieza's interactions with Paragus are so good. He is such a petty bitch with Paragus. Like, Paragus has the line where he's like, I've been sparring. He's like, where Frieza says, is this his first fight with another person? And he says, other than sparring with me, yes. And Frieza says, yes, but at your power level, that hardly counts for anything.
It's so good. Oh, it's so amazing. It's just how dismissive Frieza is of Paragus is fucking perfect.
I love it. And then, of course, I mean... Oh, but speaking of Super Saiyan transformations, I also wanted to give a shout-out to when Goku goes Super Saiyan Blue, and he's, like, freaking out and almost goes Ultra Instinct. Is a little, like, Easter egg in there. Oh, my God. The animation on that one is out of this world.
Yeah, just great. Just, you know, and I always love when we get good high-budget Dragon Ball stuff that gets to do all the cool color effects with Super Saiyan Blue. Because sometimes in Dragon Ball Super, the show, the Super Saiyan Blue stuff could feel really cheap on, like, a cheap episode. Super Saiyan Blue never looked good. But when, like, you get, like, the good episode, and it's like, fucking yeah, and it's like this cool blue gold aura, it's awesome. I love it.
It's still my favorite Super Saiyan transformation. So I love it. It looks great here. So in the story, you know, here we have Frieza deciding to kill Paragus to bring out Broly's latent potential.
Another amazing moment, just that like the quick flashback of like, oh right, I blew up that bald dude, and that made the Goku one turn Super Saiyan. I wonder what happened if I killed his dad.
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. That makes him go Super Saiyan 2.
It's such a perfect culmination of Frieza and Paragus' relationship. It's the right way for Paragus to die. It's a great callback to Paragus doing the same thing to Beats early in the movie. So there's some parallelism there. And then it would legitimately freak Broly out. It's such a great character-motivated reason for him to hit that final level. Like, the movie is always, like, every time it's going to hit you with a shot of nostalgia. Like, we're going to show you Super Saiyan Broly, but we're only going to do that after we hit you with a lot of good storytelling. You know? Like, it's very responsible in how it doles out those pieces of nostalgia for you. So,
absolutely. Yeah. So then this is the part where... Well, so a little bit earlier in the movie, you have a great little tiny Piccolo thing where Piccolo like comes in telepathically, which made me very happy because I didn't think that Piccolo was going to be in this movie. I wouldn't think there'd be any reason for Piccolo to be in this movie.
This movie has a very small cast compared to most Dragon Ball films.
Yes, which is smart. Like, I'm glad that they don't try to like shove Gohan in there when like there would be nothing for him to do. Like, there's a tiny cameo of Goten Trunks, you know. But like, and so when they shoved Piccolo in there, at first I was like, oh, that's funny. Like, I thought it was just a reference to Piccolo showing up in every fucking Dragon Ball movie, whether he needs to be there or not. But I had not put it together with the first time he cut in that, eventually the Gogeta thing needs to happen in this movie. How are they going to do that? Because I had just kind of forgotten that technically in the canon, Vegeta never learned the dance. Yep. Because I've just lived with Gogeta as a thing that exists in Dragon Ball for so long, I had never thought about a version of Dragon Ball where that never happened. So then later when fucking Goku and Vegeta, we'll get to what they do before they teleport it. Yes. But them teleporting over to Piccolo and having Piccolo teach Vegeta how to do the fusion dance and go through that whole rigmarole is the best use of Piccolo in any of these movies. And there are some good Piccolo moments in all these movies because that's the only thing Piccolo does is have Piccolo moments. But just him being able to do, like, just reprise his Goten Trunks routine of just like, no, it's wrong. The angle's at 45 degrees and yours is they like put the fucking overlay on the screen. It's like your finger was bent and them having to do the fucking fusion dance and Piccolo being like the harsh taskmaster is so fucking amazing.
This movie is so good at knowing when to like let some steam blow off with comedy, you know? Because at that point the movie's been pretty intense for a while and you get the great joke with Frieza we'll get to, and then all the fusion stuff. I mean, my God, when they put the fucking he's got the lines on with like, this is 60 degrees and this is 45. Both times I saw this movie, I just died. It is the funniest visual. I love that we get fat Gogeta for a moment. That got applause in my theater. But then they extend the joke by also having the opposite of it with skinny old Gogeta.
Yeah, the skinny one. Yeah.
And then, I mean, we should just say the joke throughout all that is, have fun, Frieza!
Yes, so Goku and Vegeta lure Broly over to Frieza because they just know that Broly's just going to attack anybody in front of him. So there's just that whole sequence where apparently Frieza fights Broly for a fucking hour while they're doing all the fusion dance shit and waiting for the fusions to dissolve after 30 minutes and then trying to
My brother had a great joke about that when he saw the movie. He said, in most cases when someone says 30 minutes on Dragon Ball, that's going to be like 5 episodes and they're going to extend it. This is the one time 30 minutes went by fast.
Yeah, exactly. It's just every time they cut back to Frieza just getting his ass rocked by Broly while they're trying to figure out the fusion dance. It's one of the hardest times I've laughed at Dragon Ball ever. It's one of the best jokes they've ever pulled in the whole history of this franchise.
It's so good. And then you are rewarded with Gogeta, which is
fucking A, my boy Gogeta, finally in the canon.
It's so
He's
good.
here.
Gogeta's always been like my favorite of the fusion characters, and he's so much better here than I mean, Fusion Reborn is great, and I don't want to put it down in any way because it's awesome. But, like, having him here, having him go Super Saiyan Blue, just the utter cockiness of Goku and Vegeta combined there, and just the fluidity of his movements, the way they do the fight here. Oh, it's so good.
I mean, just that little moment you have between him and Piccolo right after he's fused, with him, like, trying to come up with his name is so amazing. It's like, because it's the thing about Gogeta was he was just in that Fusion Reborn movie, and then they did the fucking Super Saiyan 4 thing in Dragon Ball GT.
Right. I always forget about that.
Yes, yeah, so do I. So he's in that Fusion Reborn movie, and it's amazing because he just fuses, he does a couple cool moves, he does the fucking Stardust Breaker, which is like the best move in any Dragon Ball video game. It's the thing I always put on in Xenoverse. In Xenoverse and Xenoverse 2, it's one of my ultimates because I think it just looks fucking amazing. Super Gogeta is also my favorite character in the Dragon Ball mobile game because he's really overpowered, but he's also awesome. But in that movie, he's just there and he does that really cool thing and he looks fucking awesome and it's over, but he doesn't really ever say anything. He doesn't have any real characterization. In this, I love that you don't have much, but you just get a couple of those moments with him where he actually gets to kind of talk and do his thing. And I love that he feels just like that little bit different from Vegeta. Yep. Like he's got a lot of that Gotenks. Like Vegito is cocky, but Vegito's not like cocky in this way. He's not quite this like childish in him talking about like, nah, man, it would be way cooler if I had a cool name when I showed it. Like, I'm not just going to go there without a name. Like that whole interaction just works so well for me, and I just love that we have. You know, like Gogeta was not a character that necessarily needed like to be rehabilitated in the way that Broly did if you wanted to bring him in. But the fact that they put that little bit of extra love and care into having Gogeta, it means a lot.
Also, just
Somebody
like
very much loves Gogeta.
His character design, I love. He's always had the cool like sleeves, but with the open chest, and they preserve that here. I love how perfectly the face is a blending of Goku and Vegeta. It's so well drawn. When he goes Super Saiyan Blue, it's the coolest anyone's ever looked as Super Saiyan Blue. And just the entire fight, like he is like skating on air, and when he's pulling up these like rainbow colored like energy balls and sending them out, it's such a good fight. The music in that sequence is go the Broly, go the Broly. It's so good. I love it all. It is an amazing climax, and it's got this great character hook with Chilai and Limo, you know, going around trying to save Broly, and the Dragon Balls being used in a really substantive way at the end of this story. It's a perfect ending. It's so good.
Yeah, it's amazing. There's also that entire part where Gogeta and Broly are fighting, and Broly's gone super crazy, and Gogeta's gone Super Saiyan Blue. And, like, it's just, like, apparently the power levels are so huge that they just go into an alternate dimension or something, and Gogeta's just like, whoa! This is nuts! And just, like, they keep on fighting.
I love it because there's barely any acknowledgement of it. It's just Gogeta goes like, what the hell? And yes, that is probably That and what follows, the whole Kamehameha sequence, are some of my favorite pieces of fighting in this because it is so trippy. It is such a bold choice to just be like, they broke the dimensional barrier. I don't know if we're supposed...
It's like they just fought onto the set of fucking, like, Doctor Strange or something is what just happened.
I love that, like, you can read it as either, like, that literally happened or the movie just decided to go crazy for a second. It's, like, not clear if it really happened or not. The way it, like, breaks back into the environment and we come back to the snow at like, sunset, all of that. Oh, man. Anything else to say about the fight? You mentioned the POV shot. That's one of the big ones I wanted to mention. We talked about the different power-ups. It's all so good.
It's just amazing. I think we went over it well. It's like, obviously, it's the most well-animated, most well-directed Dragon Ball fight there's ever been. Like, easy. Like, that's not even a competition for me. It's like, the only competition is maybe the end of Dragon Ball Super, but no.
It's so different that I have trouble, like, gauging it, because what this one does that is so different than the others is, and this really did throw me for a loop, is that you are not a spectator of this fight. Like, most Dragon Ball fights are done like you're on the sidelines watching it, and that's kind of how they've always done it, and Super plays with that a little bit, but not entirely, because the tournament is a tournament where people are in the stands. Yeah. In this one, you are in the fight. The camera is a participant in the fight. Not just when you're in Broly's POV, but throughout. The camera is weaving and bobbing with them, and there's a continual sense of movement, and I don't know about you, Sean, but I forgot to breathe during a lot of this fight, because it is just so, like, overwhelming, and... Like, it took me 2 viewings to realize there is a lot of really precise, complex choreography going on in there, too. Yeah. It's not just camera movement and stylism. It's just a really good fight also, but, like, that's the thing, is that it's the choice to, like, have you become a participant in the fight is so different that it's almost like you can't compare this to anything else. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it is definitely going for a very different effect and a very different style, but it's like, man,
it's so good, yeah.
It executes what it's going for at such a high level. Yeah. And so all of that, and you're like, that is a really important thing to point out, that I'm glad you pointed out, that it's like, it's not just that, like, the camera movements are really cool and dynamic. It is that within that, there is, like, really clear, effective, interesting choreography and different moves. It's not just, like, people punching and kicking so fast that, like, their hands are just blurs. There's a real sense of pacing and artfulness to the way that they choreograph the fight.
When Gogeta... sorry. When Gogeta...
And then it's... Yeah, okay.
No, go ahead.
But then it's the narrative momentum and the narrative impact of all that is what is ultimately most important. And that's the most important thing about the fight choreography and the pacing and the animation, the style, and everything, is that it is always used to serve the story and the next character beat and moving the plot towards the conclusion of Broly disappearing right when the Kamehameha is about to hit.
Yes. And speaking of that scene, when Gogeta is firing the Kamehameha, I so desperately want to get the Blu-ray and go frame by frame, because they do this crazy shit with his face and body where it looks like a different artist did every frame. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like it's contorting in all these weird ways. It's really experimental, and it just... Oh, it looks so good. I want to, like, put frames from this movie on my wall.
Yes, yeah. It's just gorgeous, amazing, perfect ending to the fight. I also just love, there's, like, that little moment where Frieza's going to shoot the ship as they're escaping, and Kuchita just goes, it's like, nah, not today, buddy. Yep. It's like, fine.
I love Frieza's line there, too, where he's like, I'll come back for this planet one day. It's such a great kiss-off for Frieza. And then the end of the movie, it's got a really beautiful denouement with... I mean, you've got the menace of Frieza building his army more. I'm so curious where they're going with that, if anywhere in particular. Chilai and Limo deciding to go off with Broly, who we haven't said it enough, but Chilai and Limo are wonderful characters.
Yes, the dub actors that play those characters are awesome, but that's one of the things I'm most excited for watching the Japanese dub is I know both the voices of both those actors, Mizuki Nana and Tomokazu Sugita, that are playing those two characters in Japanese, and it's now that I've seen the characters in English, it's such good casting, and I'm so excited for Sugita as the guy. It's just going to be fucking amazing. Yeah,
but I don't want to sell the dub actors short, because they're great. The one who plays Chilai is Futaba in Persona 5.
Yes,
perfect casting. She's so good. Anyway, but yes, they're great. They decide to go live with Broly, and then the end is Goku coming to visit Broly and giving him the capsules and offering to train with him. Wonderful ending, right?
Yeah, and the fucking kiss-off line that he gives of, and you can call me Kakarot.
Yes.
Amazing, perfect, beautiful, love it.
It's apparently different in Japanese.
Really?
Apparently, it's not, Broly, you can call me Kakarot. It's some variation of, my name is Kakarot. He claims it for himself, and I've seen people saying, like, it is a little materially different in the original Japanese, the way Masako Nozawa says it. And I'm really curious, because I want to know how big a character moment that is supposed to be, that Goku says his name is Kakarot. Like, it's a big character moment in the dub, the way they have it, because he's never addressed himself that way. And I agree, it's a great kiss-off line. But I'm really curious how it plays with Masako Nozawa in Japanese, if that is... I don't know, I have not seen the Japanese version, so what I've heard about it could be wrong. Although the track on the soundtrack is I'm Kakarot. So... I'm really curious about that. Either way, it's a great ending.
Yeah, amazing ending. For me, one of the most important things about that ending is the promise of these characters are around. Like, it was one of the things we talked about a little bit at the end of the Broly podcast for the old movies was what is this Broly going to be and what do they do? And I think we both are saying this, like, I hope he lives.
Yep.
Like, I hope because it's like, if this version of Broly is really good, which he is, we want him to stick around, and I'm so, so glad that they did that, because it's such an amazing version of the character. I mean, fucking amazing version of the character. He's an amazing character. It doesn't matter fucking what he came from originally. He just feels so valuable teaming out. Like, in him and Chilai, in the...
Limo.
I can never... Limo. Like, because those are both of those characters, they do something that I really love of seeing what is, like, a normal grunt in the Frieza Force, like... You know, that's not Zarbon or Dodoria or the Ginyu Force, and not even like a pool or whatever, you know, like all the Kui, the people that like you thought were the grunts in the Frieza Force, but like no, like in their own right, those are relative, like they could smoke like Krillin or Yamcha on Earth, right? Like those are like relatively powerful people. So it's like getting to see these normal people in the Frieza Force, like I think that's a really valuable perspective as well, especially if the Frieza thing is going to continue to be a thing for the future of whatever they do next. Like having those two characters and having Broly is such a valuable thing that I'm really excited to see what they do with it.
I mean, I feel like we're going to have to save this discussion for another time of what comes next, but think of how much is on the table at the end of this movie, combined with the end of the TV series, Dragon Ball Super, is you have Frieza alive amassing an army. You have 12 universes out there, including one that, you know, has a bunch of... It's multiple ones that have characters we really know and love. We have a whole planet of Saiyans out there in Universe 6 that Vegeta has promised to go visit. We have Broly over there on his home planet with his new friends. Like, there are so many storytelling possibilities. It's crazy.
Yeah. Because keep in mind, there's also... Not every single universe was in the Tournament of Power, because the most powerful universes... it was only the weakest universes that were in the Tournament of Power. So there's like different universes that we haven't seen anybody really from yet. So there's that whole possibility.
I'm just
out
so
there
excited.
Too.
I'm so excited for whatever comes next. And all I gotta ask Toei is that if you make Dragon Ball Super Season 2 or whatever you call it, please do not start with a 14-episode retelling of this movie.
Yeah,
for the love of God, please don't ruin the movie. Please don't do that.
I mean, hopefully there shouldn't be any need for that. You know, it's not the same situation as it was when Dragon Ball Super came around. They have competent people, and they have a competent pipeline that they have already made for Dragon Ball Super.
Yes.
So hopefully they could just start that up again.
All right, a couple final things.
Yeah.
The dub. We should mention briefly, that's the version we saw.
Yes.
I think it's good. I think some of the voices are great. I think it's not great dub overall. Like, it's good script. It's well written. It's got some dumb moments. I don't know why Piccolo quotes Dragon Ball Z abridged at one point with the "what in the multiverse" line.
Oh, I didn't even catch that.
Yeah, he goes, "What in the multiverse?" It's a dumb moment. It comes right after the moment where it's right when they arrive at him, Vegeta and Goku. So if people were laughing in your theater, you might not have heard it. But anyway, like it's a good dub overall. I have to like. I think in general the trend of the newer voices tend to be the better ones. Like Chris Ayres, Frieza, Chilai and Limo are both great. I think that continues to be true. I think Chris Sabat does some really good work in this as Vegeta and King Vegeta. I think he's really strong. I have to say I don't like Sean Schimmel's Goku. I've gotten to a point where, and I know this is an unpopular opinion, I don't buy it and I don't like hearing it.
Like, I like it because it's what I grew up with. Like, I massively prefer Masako Nozawa. Like, it never bothers me, but like, I 100% get why it would bother you.
So here's the thing. So I've had to listen to people for years talk about how, like, no, you don't get it. Japanese Dragon Ball's bad because they got a woman to voice a guy. And it's the stupidest argument on earth. But I feel a little bit of that in reverse with Sean Schemmel, because and this is particularly the more he's tried to lean into the youthful side of Goku, when I hear his Goku, what I hear is a 50-year-old guy in a sound booth trying to sound like a kid. I don't hear Goku. And I get that really strongly in this movie. He's got some good moments. I like his speech to Broly in the middle of the fight. I think he delivers that well. I think he does some of the yells well. The English cast is kind of hit and miss on the yelling. I think like Vic Mignogna's Broly dialogue is really good in this. Vic's a great actor. I think Vic Mignogna's yelling as Broly is pretty subpar. But that's also a very Japanese skill, as these things go. So I don't know. That's kind of how I feel about Sean Schemmel's Goku at this point. I like the guy, and I like the general quality of the voice. It's something that I've noticed more and more as the series has gone on, because the more recent material has leaned more into the youthful Goku stuff, and it's just when he does that, I don't buy it. But overall, I mean, this is a very good dub. It's competent. It seems very faithful to the original. It's well produced. The only voice that's new that fell flat for me was Paragus. I thought was a little weak, but
yeah, I was fine with Paragus. It didn't like stand out to me as a voice that didn't work. Like, I do think this is the first like expanded English dub Dragon Ball thing I've seen in a long time now. Like, it hasn't been probably since I watched Dragon Ball Kai in like 2011.
Because you didn't see Battle of Gods and Resurrection F dubbed, did you?
No,
okay, and I did. Yeah,
no. So I've never seen the dub versions of those movies.
Okay.
So it's been a while. Then I've seen dubbed clips of scenes from Dragon Ball Super on YouTube. I've just been curious, and I've generally enjoyed those. But it's easy to be like, I want to watch like this 2-minute scene. And I was actually like really pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed the dub, because it was the one thing I was like dreading is way too strong a word, but the thing that like I was most hesitant about like making all the effort to go see this movie and stuff and go drive like 30 minutes to a nice movie theater to see it and everything was like, I am now so associated and fixated with the Japanese version, with like the Japanese cast, that it felt like weird to go back to the English version. But I got acclimated to it very quickly, and obviously I have seen more and like heard more Sean Schemmel playing Goku than I have Masako Nozawa, just because that's the only thing I listened to for like the first 18 years of my life or whatever, doing Dragon Ball stuff. So that's going to be a little bit of catching up.
It's just funny because when I was a kid, getting into the series, I always liked Sean Schemmel's Goku more than Chris Sabat's Vegeta. I think early Chris Sabat Vegeta is pretty bad because he's trying to do...
I agree.
Well, he's trying to do the Brian... They all had a task where they were trying to match the Ocean Group's character voices, so he was trying to do Brian Drummond doing Vegeta. And over time, they've passed for me, where I think Chris Sabat's Vegeta is really good at this point. It's a very good interpretation of the character, and I think Sean Schemmel's has kind of like flattened for me. Sean Schemmel also has the hardest job in the cast because he is trying to do Masako Nozawa, and she is the greatest voice actress who ever lived. So,
Yeah, and Goku's just like a hard character to play. And it's the thing where it's like, I think it got harder for him. Like, I think it got easier to play Vegeta in the sense that like Vegeta started to get like translated and written better. And so I think like Chris Sabat like started to get a better understanding of the character because the material he was getting and like what they were working with was a lot better once they started doing Kai stuff. For Sean Schemmel, his job got so much harder playing Goku because he was really good at Superman Goku. Like that, he's really good at that
I
version
agree.
of the character. And so when you have to go from that to here's like the kid in a adult's body, like the Goku we know and love from like the Masako Nozawa performance, that's a fucking hard character to play. And having to shift from the Superman Goku into that Goku, I think must have been like a very difficult thing for him. I think he does I like it definitely more than you are. And I enjoy his performance. I think he's got he's like moved to an interesting place with it that like is definitely nowhere near where Nozawa for me, but it's cool and I like it and I prefer it over the way they used to do it, but yeah, it's hard.
It is, yeah. If anything's holding the dub back for me, that's it. But you should you should totally see this movie whether you watch the dub or not. It's a totally competent presentation of the film, and sometimes more than competent.
And, I would also recommend people go see it in the theater.
Yes.
Hopefully a theater that has a competent sound setup or whatever. Yeah. But I really enjoyed the experience of being able to see this on a big screen, because it's like most Dragon Ball movies. I don't regret not seeing Battle of Gods or Resurrection F on the theater, because I don't feel like visually those movies are so spectacular.
Resurrection F had some crazy good stuff in it, but yes.
Yeah, I'm sure. As with anything, it would have been improved by the experience. But this is a movie that I feel like if I had seen it first on Blu-ray, I would have felt like I kind of wish I had made the effort to see this in the theater.
I totally get it.
So I'm very glad I did. Even if now I'm just desperately awaiting the ability to see it with the Japanese cast.
Yes, and we're going to have to do at least a mini review again when we get to see it in Japanese. Which, hey, the movie made a lot of money. Funimation, if you would please just do 2 Japanese screenings of it, I'll pay. You have my money. I'd do it.
Absolutely, yeah. It's been a very long time since I saw the same movie twice in the theatrical run. That would be the only thing that would probably ever get me to do it. Is shit. Okay, the Japanese version, I am 100% there. You don't even need to put subtitles. You don't even need to go that far. Just fucking play it somewhere. I will go.
I will too. I know the story. I can follow it. Fuck it. Okay, so you are of the opinion this is the best Dragon Ball movie.
Yes.
I am, more and more I think about it, more I talk about it with you, I'm leaning towards that. Let me make my one case for Battle of Gods.
Okay, I think there is a case for Battle of Gods. I want to make that case.
Because Battle of Gods does not look as nice. It does not have as good of animation. It has very nice animation. The fight in Battle of Gods is really cool. I think for me, it's 2 things. One is just Battle of Gods is 5 years old, and I've seen Battle of Gods 15 times. Because just between its protracted release to get here, I saw it 3 times raw in Japanese. Then I saw it in theaters in English. Then I saw it on Blu-ray in Japanese, and there was also an extended cut. So I've seen it many, many times. So part of that is just that. And Broly I've only seen twice, and it's very new. So over time, I don't know where I'm going to land on this. I think for me, what Battle of Gods did in just giving the series a new lease on life and creating those characters of Beerus and Whis and reorienting Dragon Ball squarely in Toriyama's universe while also expanding the vision of that universe so beautifully and using all the characters. And I think more than anything, what's always made since it came out Battle of Gods my favorite is just how well it uses Goku, in that it's one of the few concentrated pieces of Dragon Ball media that tells a beginning, middle, end story with a clear arc for Son Goku, the protagonist. And I think it does that beautifully. And I think for me, just we have this era of Dragon Ball because of Battle of Gods. And that moment will always be so special for me when that movie gave the franchise its life back. But at the same time, Broly is on the other end of that. It's kind of a culmination of everything they've done since then. And all they've learned and how bold the series has gotten. And of course, the animation in Battle of Gods can't touch the animation in this. So they're very hard to compare. But I think for everything we've talked about and everything I just said, that's why those 2 are at the top for both of us, I think.
Yeah, for me, I think one of the, outside of even just, the animation and the aesthetic stuff that Dragon Ball Super Broly does that I love so much, I think the main thing that Broly has that edges it out over Battle of Gods for me is, I feel like the pacing in Broly is razor fucking sharp,
yes.
And Battle of Gods is a little bit slow for me in places.
It is, totally, yeah.
And I like all the character stuff, and I love Battle of Gods, but I think the beginning sections of that movie, it takes so long to kind of find itself, that for me, Broly has such a strong command of its own pacing and structure, that I think on its own, if you take the influence of Battle of Gods and the influence it had on the series and how fucking critical it was for Battle of Gods to come out when it did to sort of usher in this era of Dragon Ball, and you focus more on these movies squarely on their own terms as films, I think for me, Dragon Ball Super Broly is definitely better than Battle of Gods.
And
they're both very fucking cool.
Yes, and I could totally, I can't wait to see it again. I loved it. I look forward to letting this movie settle with me, and just love it in that way because it's still so fresh. All right, I think that does it for this week. This was a ridiculously long podcast, but it felt good to do this again, Sean.
Yes. It was for the listeners didn't have a hiatus, we had a little week-long hiatus, and so we had a lot of stuff to talk about. This is a fucking movie that's got a lot of shit. There's that whole little bit. There's one of my favorite little bits in the movie where Broly is fighting Whis for a second, and Whis is just like not having it and just dodging all of this shit. Like, there's so many little touches of this movie that's amazing. So
Beerus taking care of Bulla. That's a
yeah, that's so good.
Yes.
I love when they cut back to him and she's just like on his chest. He's like, oh, it seems like everything's gone okay.
Yes. All right. So that's it for this week. Next week, Sean, do you think we should finally start our Lord of the Rings rewatch?
Oh, geez, I don't know. I don't know if I will have time to watch. It's a long fucking movie.
We'll talk about that off the air.
Yeah, we'll talk about that off the
air.
For
now, Dragon Ball is good.
For now, Dragon Ball is very, very good, and I'm going to need to eagerly count the days until I just need to fucking watch the Japanese version of this movie so bad. Oh, God.